All right, I think we are about ready to start.
Okay. For those who don't know, I am Antonio Wolf. I am in, as a description used to say, I don't know if it says it anymore, I am an independent philosopher. You know, for a long time I've kind of like not been comfortable with saying that, but if you look at all the stuff that I've done and the quality of what I've put out, and I've been cited a few times, I think it's kind of an undeniable fact that I count as much as anybody with a bachelor's and a master's and even a PhD. So, anyways, a little bit about G.W. of Hegel, German philosopher, famous, the most famous out of a trio of a very loose movement called German idealism in the 1800s, very early, the first half of the 1800s. A bunch of post-Kantian nerds who took Immanuel Kant's philosophy very seriously, but also saw it as extremely flawed. Now, if you know anything about online debates, particularly around theism, one of the most prominent now and rising popular forms of argument and apologetics is the transcendental argument for God. That is partially based on the Kantian form of transcendental arguments, and it's partially based on Hegel's solution to that. The most famous original guy from that is Van Til. Van Til was not a Hegelian. He did not like Hegel very much, apparently. He disagreed with, fundamentally what Hegel was doing. But nonetheless, he liked some of the stuff that Hegel had come up with, and so Van Til formed the transcendental argument for God, kind of half Hegelian, half Kantian. Obviously, this talk is going to be kind of presenting you why, particularly the problems of skepticism, which the transcendental argument works around, are overcome by Hegel. Hegel's main focus on his philosophy early on in the phenomenology of spirit, as well as the science of logic, is in putting forth an answer to the fundamental problems of skepticism revealed by Immanuel Kant. Kant wrote this famous book. If you ever get into any philosophy, you'll hear its name, but you'll usually not encounter very many people who know what the hell it's actually about. The Critique of Pure Reason, in which he proclaimed that he found the boundaries of human reason and what we can talk about and what we can't talk about in philosophy, and what we can claim to know and ultimately not know. This kind of was the last form of a pseudo-skepticism that had begun in the Enlightenment philosophies in Europe, in which people went and said, well, you know, I'm a free thinker and I'm a rational person, and I'm skeptical about all these claims that people make, except for, you know, being skeptical about my assumptions about what I believe the world is and how the world works and what it is to know. So Kant kind of gets the extreme of that, sets a very very hard obstacle between what we know and what we can know, between the world as it appears to us and the world as it is. And now, if you get into the Kantian literature, Kantians will quibble about whether they believe that this has anything to do with like the way the world is, or whether it's just Kant giving a kind of warning about not trying to think about the way the world is, whether there is a world or there isn't, beyond your mind. Kant really can't really say. The famous thing in itself. But anyways, that's kind of the extreme point of like modern skepticism. After that, you get the German idealists, then you get the break with the analytics and the continentals. So Hegel's kind of the inflection point where if you're like me, you believe the answer was found. If you're not like me and you don't believe the answer was found, you basically have given up on having answers in the first place. So I'll give you a few little things about Hegel, some interesting positions. As you can see here, I have stream on my screen, unique positions on speculative philosophy, which is what I call Hegelianism, because Hegel did not intend his philosophy to just be his. It was, in his view, the answer to a lot of things in philosophy. So we'll go over a couple things. So first of all, what is skepticism? The skepticism like Hegel's dealing with is not modern skepticism, like, you know, like, what's the name of like the current fashionable guy? I forget. He ran Skeptic magazine or whatever. Mike Schumer, I think. It's not that kind of skepticism, because those people are just like a bunch of like doubtsiders and naysayers, and they're like, well, prove the thing what you're saying. That's not really what skepticism is about. Skepticism in the classical sense was less arrogant, but also more extreme than that. So the ancient skeptics, like Sextus Empiricus, Pyrrho, or Pyrrho, I forget. I don't know how you pronounce that. They were skeptical about everything. They were skeptical about your claims about what things are. They were skeptical about the things that you claim of how you know them. So they had this whole gauntlet of questions that they had for people to try to figure out if they had any knowledge at all. And the skeptics didn't claim that they knew anything. The skeptics were skeptics. So the name skeptic just means, and the word just means to suspend judgment. So the whole thing is, I don't know. I don't know if you know. I don't know if I don't know, or if I know. But there are certain things that they had assumed, which were related to the forms of reason, like rules of logic and whatnot, about what knowing should look like. Hegel is more skeptical than that, because Hegel does not assume what knowing should look like. Hegel goes ahead and starts phenomenology spirit and says, well, okay, let's assume that we don't know. We don't know what it is to know, what it is that's supposed to be known, and how you know it. So how do we deal with it? We're going to go basically, other people tell us what it is that they think knowledge is, what it is that they think they know, and how it is that they think they know it. And the question is simply, are they going to be coherent? Are they going to be internal, tied to the internal restraints that they have set up for themselves? And can they produce the conclusions that they claim to have? If they can, wonderful. Whatever they call knowledge is whatever it is. And if they can't, well, then we know that whatever they have is a failure, be it whatever it is, whether ultimately you can call that knowledge or not. Obviously, Hegel doesn't call that knowledge. It's a failure. I'll read to you the slide. Philosophy in general must be skeptical. It must suspend judgment in the sense of not coming to its subject matter with prejudiced conceptions. Yet most skeptics today and in the past are dogmatic in proceeding from what they claim to be self-evident beginnings. Skepticism as a philosophy, which is a classical school, was skeptical of everything except for logic or reason itself, and to that extent was dogmatic. The skepticism of the Enlightenment was only partial and much less rationally justified than classical skepticism. So, German idealism and Hegelianism sets out to solve that. So here's like the classical problem of the skeptics, the most famous one in modernity, which is called the problem of the criterion by Sextus Empiricus, part of the Pyrrhonian school. So they posed a problem. So there are many claims to knowledge about the criterion of truth, the measure of how we know that something is true. Second, to decide which criterion is the true one, a criterion for the criterion is needed. So then, using an already disputed criterion is circular in assuming the conclusion. So if you're an empiricist, somebody asks you, well, prove that empiricism is true, and then you just point back to your own empirical assumption, that's circular. That's not a very good reason. And 4, using another criterion simply adds yet another to the disputed criterion. So fine, you use a different criterion, and somebody can say, well, okay, justify that criterion. And so you got to give it a criterion for the criterion for the criterion ad infinitum. You're stuck either in a circular reasoning, which is just the same thing as brute statements, arbitrary assumptions, axioms, or you're stuck in an endless chain of justifications, which you can never finish. So Hegel's strategy, in the phenomenology of spirit at least. So there are many claims to knowledge about the criterion of truth. If we are actually skeptical, we have no idea what knowledge even is. 3, let those who claim knowledge tell us what knowledge is and how to verify it. 4, you do what people in science tell you to do. What everybody claims that you ought to do in good science and good thinking, which is, okay, somebody makes a claim, does it make sense? And second, let's try it out. Let's experiment it. Let's see if it actually does work. So 5, if it works, wonderful, success, we have knowledge. If it fails, the question is, why did it fail? because the failure in Hegel's strategy is not, well, I have a criterion, say, let's say I'm Jay Dyer, and I come in and I ask you, well, prove that you have knowledge, without God. So I'm setting up the criterion of God, and you have to work within my criterion. Well, Hegel doesn't do that. Hegel doesn't set up his own criterion and say, well, you have to prove things according to how I want you to prove them. You have to set things up. You tell me how you're going to prove it, what it means to prove it, what you're proving, and we'll see if it works. So if it doesn't work, obviously, you would have to be able to tell me why is it that it didn't work according to your own criterion. So 6. All right, suppose that it fails. What else can you do if you don't have a criterion like Hegel does? So does someone else claim a criterion that does not suffer this failure? If not, well, if we're good skeptics, we just kind of do nothing. But if we're rational people and we actually still know that there are other people in the world, we can go ahead and try these other criterions that people set up. The only special thing that Hegel does is really hold himself strictly to the criterion that people are working with, and he also systematizes the order of how to test criterions and whether certain criteria answer problems in other criteria in a chain of complexity, starting from the most simple to the most complex. Obviously, at the beginning, you start with the most simple. I mean, why complicate things? But if the simple things don't work, maybe something more complex explains to us why the simple thing doesn't work. So that's that for the skeptical stuff. As far as the transcendental argument for God, presuppositionalism in current debate, the general structure is premise 1, if God does not exist, then knowledge or justified knowledge or the possibility of certainty is impossible. 2, we have knowledge or justified knowledge or the possibility of certainty, therefore God exists. It's a very simple structure to the argument. There are many, many formulations of this argument. They all kind of revolve on this possibility, the condition of possibility. The simple problem with these is the transcendental argument tells us God exists. It even tells us what God is, and it tells us what God does. The problem with that is, okay, well, we can ask them not the issue of the criterion, but the issue of justifying the very concepts that they're using, because these concepts are themselves criteria. A lot of people don't know this. If you have this object called God, and you define it in such and such a way, and you use it in your arguments, I have the right to ask you, well, prove to me that this thing you're using is even a thing at all. One, you have to tell me what is God. You have to justify to me why that is actually even coherent. And if that's really an independent object, or if that's just some subjective fiction of yours. Because, anybody can say anything in words. That's coherent and grammatically, proper. But whether it's actually intelligible is a different issue. So, the Christians, which are the ones who run this transcendental argument. And by the way, I expect that Muslims soon, in a few years, will start running their own version of this argument. Because it's a pretty good argument. It stumps a lot of people. So, as far as Revelation goes, which is what they appeal to, well, how do they know that this being actually is who they claim to be or what they claim to be? Any powerful being can say they are God. Look at what the Muslims say, and look what Christians say about the Muslims. The Muslims say, well, Allah has spoken to us and has revealed to this. And the Christians say, but, if you look at the content of what this being has said, it's clearly demonic. Why would you believe that? And likewise, somebody else, Hindus, say the same thing about Christians. They're sort of well, how can you claim that this person, Jesus, is God? God is all powerful. It's doing contradictory things. He was killed by mere men. Our gods, like Krishna, they just crushed their enemies. What do you mean that this person was God? That makes no sense. So second, anybody can define God in any way. They can go ahead and say, God is ultimately, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, blah, blah, blah. They can add in as many properties as they want, and, well, what can you do about it? Well, what you can do about it is what Hegel allows you to do, which is to demand that they justify the necessity and objectivity of their concept, because you can't just put things willy-nilly. When you're talking about, say, geometry, sure, you can define a triangle pretty concretely and with some necessity. But then, if somebody says, well, I think triangles actually are also red, essentially, you can say that. But that has nothing to do with actual triangularity. And the third, anybody can say that God secures knowledge, but how does God do so? To be honest, like the tag people do have an account of this. It's not a very good account, though. They just go ahead and said, well, God is all good. He will never deceive us. It's kind of Descartes thing. And, God is universal and necessary, and so he gives us universal and necessary laws of logic, etc. It's a nice little story, but it's just a story. So those are the fundamental problems of tag. And if you ever want to argue against these people, that's really what you ought to do. All these successful people that I've seen that intuit this, atheists who argue against people like Darth Dawkins or even Jay Dyer, they get kicked off pretty quickly because this is not an issue that tag people can really deal with. So moving on from that, some interesting stuff about Hegel, Hegel's philosophy, speculative philosophy. Hegel proves that there's only one philosophy, and obviously you look out in the world and you say, well, look, there's a lot of philosophies. What do you mean there's only one philosophy? As a matter of fact, a lot of them contradict. Well, if by philosophy we mean systematic comprehension of pure concepts, and if by reason we mean, one, the total and systematic unity of relations or parts, think about reason like ratio, like a fraction, 1 over 2, 1 over 4, 3/5, that kind of stuff. You have two parts, numerator, denominator, related as a whole. That whole is the entire systematic unity of the related parts. And that whole dynamic structure is what you would call reason, a ratio, rationality. Second, the coherent, intelligible determination of how parts as parts relates to each other as parts. How the mutual relation of parts as is internal and generative of a whole of parts, and how a whole as a whole generates parts within itself. Think about it as reason as purpose, as what moves things in certain ways. So if philosophy and reason are understood that way, let's assume that if, premise one, if knowledge is not rational, it must be accessed by other means. 2, a plurality of claimed truths accessed by non-rational means exist. 3, the proof for each claim cannot be explained or exhibited to others or to oneself as an inference, but can only be experienced through some putative practice, for example, meditation. Subpoint A, philosophical discourse requires shared experience and exhibition to agree or disagree about. So the conclusion is, if this were the case, if knowledge is not rational, then the very enterprise of philosophy cannot exist. There can be no discourse about truth. There can be no philosophy. But obviously there is philosophy. Obviously the world that does come together. Obviously we do share experiences. And no matter how much that there are people that claim to have a private little world, say. So another argument is, so if experiences may be discoursed by those who share them, the same experience may be described by opposing conceptions. So, you see an event, you see, say, a car crash or something, and there's two people who saw it from two different perspectives. And obviously in the immediacy of perspectives, they describe immediately different things. So different that they could be completely opposed. One person would say it was person A's fault that the crash happened. Another person says, no, it's person B's fault that it happened. So opposing experiences and conceptions of them, claiming to be truth, are incoherent with each other. Conclusion, non-rational truths cannot come together in one truth. So, if we have just completely radical experiences and they're opposed, and we don't share these experiences, we can't cross over to each other, we can't have a difference, and these things can't really come together. But each one of us claims that this is the entirety of the truth. We're not saying it's the partial truth. The claims of this kind of philosophy are never partial. It's all or nothing. So if it was the case that we have completely disconnected truths that are over the same thing, then we cannot have these non-rational truths. Obviously, the world is united. We're together. You're here in Discord listening to me. People on YouTube are listening to me. We have shared language. We have shared experience. Reason unifies. Reason is a ratio. So so we're together even though we're distinct, just like in a fraction. We are all parts of the same whole. So we are in reason ourselves, existentially as well as cognitively. So reason is part of the world. We are people who think and unify things in our thoughts. So the conclusion: reason alone has impetus to unify itself and the world as a whole. So it's through reason that we have this drive cognitively, and it's also through reason and the fact of reason that the world itself is unified. Anyways, so because of that, because of those three things, that there can be no discourse of a truth if knowledge is irrational, but knowledge does have structure, so it's rational. And since non-rational truths cannot come together, but we are together, the world must be rational as a whole. Reason must be rational itself as a whole with the existential world out there. And our own capacity to reason with each other must also come together in some way. So there can only be really one long, drawn-out discourse of philosophy, which is one systematic philosophy. Now, obviously, at each point, there may be disagreements. At each point, there will be differences. But ultimately, there is a process of reason that is bringing that all together, reintegrating it, because the fact of reality is that reality is integrated. So if we want to know the truth, our own thinking must be integrated as well. So interesting things about Hegel's a lot of talk of absolute, the absolute, aka God, aka the idea. By absolute, Hegel doesn't really mean anything that's very strange. So absolute is that which is irreducible to another, cannot be broken down in or by another, and which has no need to reference another in any way. Another definition is that which references, relates to, or acts upon itself. So could there be many absolutes? Well, suppose that there are a plurality of absolutes. Each absolute should have no reference to another. In being this absolute and not another, each absolute negatively refers to another for its particular being. To reference another is a contradiction to absoluteness. So conclusion, there is only one absolute. So, think about multiverses. Even if there are universes, many, many universes which are closed in upon themselves, each one of them has their own physical laws and rules that are different from each other, modes of experience, etc., etc. Each of these universes is not the other existent universes, is a relationship between them, which means that they exist in a domain in which they're negatively unified, which means that they are not absolute because they do have a negative reference or a negative relation. They are not simply self-related. Absolute idealism. This is what Hegel a few times calls or names his philosophy. Nobody knows what the hell this is. If you ever hear about this, people are like, well, Berkeley was a subjective idealist. Schelling was an objective idealist and Hegel's an absolute idealist. What the hell does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean what you would think it means. It doesn't have to do with consciousness. It doesn't have to do with things being in my mind, properly speaking. There are two senses of the meaning of idea. There's idea like a regular everyday idea. Oh, well, that's just an idea in your head, a fiction. Something that's just completely subjectively contingent, has no necessary being of its own. So an idealization is dependent entities which do not exist or subsist independently. It does not concern mind dependence in the finite subjective sense. So anything that's ideal in this sense is not just what's in your head. So a clump of dirt, for example, is ideal in this sense. It's not a real entity. The clump of dirt is just contingent upon the mineral crystals which the soil is composed of. Those crystals are the actual real objects. They have some measure of independence, whereas the clump of dirt is much, much less independent. And in fact, it's just completely dependent. It does not bring itself about. Whereas if you get a crystal, you put it in a proper solution of the chemicals that it needs to construct itself, the crystal will grow itself all on its own. Mounds of dirt don't grow themselves all on their own. There's also the sense of idea, like, the ideal partner, the ideal romance, the ideal novel, the ideal movie, the ideal video game. That's the sense of ideal, perfect version of the thing, cleansed of any external impurity that, would cause problems with it. That form of the idea is also what you would just call the ultimate objectivity. It would be the thing that is truly, fully independent. A very important thing to keep in mind is abstraction. Obviously, we usually link abstraction to thinking. Thinking is abstract, concepts are abstract, universals. There's multiple meanings to that. First meaning is that which is within a whole, yet considered without reference to that whole. Abstraction, quite literally, etymologically, just means to take away from, to part away from the whole. Second, an immediate, universal, unity or thought which considers neither condition nor consequence of its immediacy. So if you consider, say, a cat, and you're just like, well, the cat is a cat, and what you see before you is, a white, furry, meowing thing, and you're like, well, that's all a cat is. You're considering it only in its immediacy. You're not considering the details of its existence, the process of its species life, its life cycle, etc. So it's also, both of these are coherent with a common notion of abstraction as something vague and something unreal. In both of these, detail is omitted, taken away from its context, and another one of these, this thing is considered just in its immediate appearance without considering its conditions and consequences as specific kinds of context. Another important term, probably the most famous term other than dialectics that comes from Hegel, is Aufhebung. I translate that as upheaval. That is normally these days translated as sublation. I hate sublation. Upheaval makes sense in that it's an actual word in English. Sublation is not. It's just a made-up word. It's just a made-up word just for Hegel, just for this one term, which is very rare enough. Upheaval in regular discourse just means, something that's a huge disruption, a great disruption. Usually people qualify that mostly of earthquakes, for example, or political shakeups. So there's your cancellation form of Aufhebung. Aufhebung means to cancel, to preserve, and to raise. Upheaval, the word quite literally is upheave. Heave is a heavy lift, a strong lift, a powerful lift. And when you say upheave, obviously a heave is a lift, and a lift is automatically going up. So why would you say uplift? It means that you're lifting something up to, and you're setting it up higher specifically. It used to be synonymous with uplift. Uplift nowadays has a qualitative and social dimension. You're uplifting a community, uplifting your spirits, your mood, etc. So I connect both upheaval in the chaotic, disruptive form, upheaval in the literal lift, and then upheaval synonymous with the qualities and the abstract metaphor of uplift in the positive qualitative sense, which also includes preservation. Obviously, if you uplift a community, you're preserving them as well. So upheaval in my use here is to cancel, to raise, to preserve, to be unified with an opposite. The first moment of an upheaval is a disruptive cancellation. The second moment is the raising, which cancels the stasis of what there is. The third moment is that of the new settled order, the preservation of that which has become through the ruptured and risen ground. So, interesting stuff. In absolute idealism, quite literally all things are upheaved. So there is the immediate, the world that just is, your immediate sense perceptions, your immediate thoughts and feelings. To the immediate is itself mediated in not being the mediate. That is, it upheaves itself to the mediate. So on the categorical level, just saying something is immediate, not even the something, but just immediacy itself. The term says it all. It is immediate. It's not mediate, which means that it mediates itself against the mediate. And mediation here is just being middle, the middle of anything, or the process between anything. If you know a little bit about legal stuff, in legal terms, mediators are used a lot. Your lawyer is a mediator in court. You can have a representative mediate for you in court. In religion, the priest is a mediator for you, between you and God, so on and so on. So point 3, the middle itself is mediated by the immediate, but the mediation of mediation is one and the same in relation to itself, and so it upheaves itself to the immediate. It cancels itself. It also connects itself to the immediate. Because the immediate mediating the immediate which it mediates, the middle of the immediate, the middle is something that's not itself in the middle. It's what is between that. In order for the middle to be a middle, there have to be the points that are not right. If you think about it that way. So in an intelligible sense, in the conceptual sense, what is in the middle of the middle is the non-middle, the immediate. But since the immediate is itself in the middle, is itself a middle, what's happening is that you have the middle of a middle, or the mediation of mediation, but there is no middle between the non-middle and the non-middle, which sets it up to be immediate. This weird movement is what Hegel calls concrete immediacy, or true immediacy. And since just the very idea, the very concept, the very meaning of immediate and mediation are the ones that do this, like I don't make it up. I haven't made up that immediacy is mediated by mediation. The concept itself tells you that. And I didn't make it up that mediation itself is mediated by immediacy. The concept itself does that. If you think about it, it's strictly on an abstract level, that's what it does. So these concepts upheave themselves. They cancel themselves, they connect themselves with others, but they also come into unity with them. They're raised into this higher unity. So in that sense, all upheaval is self-upheaval. A lot of Hegelians go around and talk about Aufhebung, upheaval, in the sense that, this upheaves that, or that is upheaved by this, as if something else is the thing that upheaves. Not so. In Hegel's view, all genuine upheaval is always self-upheaval. The child upheaves themselves into adulthood. The sperm and egg upheave themselves into the fetus upheaves itself into the infant, and so on. Here's an interesting aspect of Hegelianism. A lot of people go say, well, Hegel's an idealist, particularly Marxists say this. Hegel's an idealist and we're materialists, and idealism is false, materialism, is the truth. Well, by Hegel's own definitions, materialism is an idealism. So consider this. So there's matter as such, pure matter, cannot be sensed or interacted with. Everything that you interact with is some already formed particular matter. It's not matter that's unformed. So matter is not an empirically singular thing, but a universal. 3, individual material bodies are not self-subsisting entities. They arise from and return to the pure matter they are constituted from. So, conclusion, empirically singular material bodies are idealizations of matter. Remember that idealization is anything that's not actually independent. So 5, matter is an abstraction about singular physical things in the mind of thinking beings. Eyes aren't the ones that see matter as such. Hands don't touch matter as such. Your emotions don't interact with matter as such. The only thing that seems to have this sense of matter is your thinking, which uses concepts that exist in concepts, which are universal abstractions. So, conclusion, matter is a concept only present to thinking. It is an idea or abstraction in the common sense. So, secondary conclusion, materialism is a form of idealism, for it posits that an immaterial matter is what constitutes reality. It's a very scandalous position, I know, but it's true. This is we're going to skip this. This just reiterates that anything that's finite obviously is not fully independent. It's not really objective in the proper sense, so it is ideal. I'm not going to read to you this argument. This argument is really abstract. The basis of it is just simply this. So if all that there are finite things, because everything that exists is not another, so it's limited, it's bounded. But the total thing, let's call it the universe, or the idea, or you can call it God if you want, whatever. Properly speaking, the universe doesn't exist because there is nothing to which the universe would be related to that is not the universe. Everything in the universe is part of the universe, is just nothing but the expression of the universe's own being. So we can't say that what is in the universe is actually not the universe. That's ridiculous. But since the universe doesn't stand as anything distinct from the things in it, the only relationships really are from one finite to another finite, one idealization to another idealization, in a process of bringing about and also eliminating distinctions, idealizations, or ideas in the common sense. So you have a process of idealization in which finite idealizations are produced, they come to be and they cease to be. So what do you have? It's nothing but the relation of the process of idealization to the moments of idealization to idealization back to the process as a whole. In a quite literal sense, on just that propositional verbal form, that's what absolute idealism actually is. Absolute idealism is nothing but the relationship of just there's nothing but idealizations and the process of idealization. That's what is meant by absolute in this sense. There's nothing but idealization relating and operating on itself as idealization and its process. Anything else you hear about what absolute idealism is, you'll hear like, it's actually the unity of subject and object. If that was the case, then Hegel would have called Fichte an absolute idealist. He would have called Schelling an absolute idealist, but he does not, because that's not what absolute idealism actually is. And as you can see, what I have just explained to you has nothing to do with minds in the usual sense. It has nothing to do with consciousness. It has nothing to do with Platonic ideas in any normal sense within philosophy. It is a very unique position which, if you just remove the ideal name, you could call it absolute infinitism, absolute finitism. It would work either way. Absolute realism, it would work either way. An interesting thing about Hegel's conception of object is that philosophy actually has this in general, but it's almost never specified specifically as a concept, that there are really two kinds of objectivity, or rather two kinds of objects. There's an object in the sense of just something that is an object empirically, that it's just, in this case, for example, an illusion of an oasis in the desert, a mirage. I can consider that an object, or at least it appears to be an object, to my vision. An object, the etymology of object is quite literally that which is thrown against. In the same way that I object to this or that. What makes something objective is precisely its resistant to being changed or affected from outside as to what it is. So there's a distinction in German between that and like a fully developed object in its consideration as independent. German has Gegenstand for just the everyday object, my object of awareness, the object of intention, blah, blah, blah. And then there's object, which is the Latin form in German, by which they mean kind of a scientific object, something being considered in its independent qualities. In English, we have that understanding, but we don't have words or even really phrases for that. So in my writing, I use objectant for mere objects as oppositional, as objecting, and objective as objects concerning their independence. So technically speaking, for Hegel, there's only one object, the universe, let's call it, the absolute. And everything else is nothing but idealizations, sub-objects that are less objective. And there are even more so, most things that you would call objects are really just objectant. They just have a surface resistance, but they don't really have an independent origination of their own. They don't have an independent existence of that kind. Second, Hegel believes that, he doesn't believe, he proves that concepts are concrete in their own way. A lot of people go like, oh, well, concepts are just abstract, like anybody can just say being is, man. That just sounds so deep, but it actually isn't. Yeah, anybody can say that, but actually, even just saying being is a concretization. In saying being is, you're making a distinction between being and itself. So you're particularizing one portion of being, its substantial mode, and an active mode of being. Like you say, being is the activity of being. So you're separating the substance of being from the activity of being, applying them together and bringing them together. And somehow this is supposed to be producing the being is X, Y, and Z of your statement. So all your thoughts are really always at least, this phrase has been besmirched thanks to our wonderful American politicians, the Clintons, particularly Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. They came up with the political term triangulation, which is a term that just, it's also used in GPS. Your position is triangulated. You're always using 3 points of reference. Likewise, in any conception, even the most basic conception of just being, you're always really triangulating between a universal abstract aspect, a particular relational aspect, and an individual aspect in which the universal in particular are, the other two reference points. Actually, let's analogize that to the GPS example. So your position on the Earth is the individual in this case. The particularities would be the difference between one satellite and another satellite, and to measure the. Give me a second. Need to respond to something real quick. Sorry about that. So the particular in this case, the satellites would be the particulars. They're indifferent to both satellites. They don't really. It's the difference between a universal is like the x, the particular is an x, and the individual is this x. And the universal between the satellites would be, say, the position equations that they use. So anyways, that's that basic idea. Another way to exemplify it is this. So suppose I say I have a rose before me. So as universal, it is one with all roses. As particular, it is not the universal rose, but an instance of the rose among many indifferent instances. If you go to a flower shop and you just said, well, I need a rose, and they're like, well, which one? You're like, look, any one. They're all roses. Just give me one. That's the relationship of particularity. As individual, it is this singular rose before me as opposed to any other singular rose. And as singular, it is different to the rose as particular and as universal. So on the categorical level, it's different. And on the existential level, every individual, every singular is different to every other. This is a scandalous one. All concepts are objective. Which means that a lot of what happens, as a matter of fact, all of what happens in all debates that you see online is illegitimate by Hegel standards, because a lot of people go and say, well, I define God as this, I define physics as this, I define this as that. You don't get to decide what things are or are not. Concepts have their own objectivity. You have to follow them. They don't follow you. You don't get to decide that you define a square to, have four sides and to have a, only three angles. That's complete nonsense. Likewise, once you have the beginning of something, determinate, you are stuck with whatever you began with. You cannot violate its structures. This is what leads to contradictions in the usual bad sense in logic. It's what leads to leaps in arguments. So that which is objective is what is independent. The universal determines itself by its own meaning to be particular, individual, and universal, in and through itself as its moments. So the fact that concepts are concrete, that they're always universal, particular, individual, that's a fact, that's a truth of concepts. It comes from concepts themselves. I didn't make it up. You can't make it up. You can't deny to me that you define concepts in a different way. Doesn't work. To give you an example, Hegel says being is nothing. He didn't make that up. Hegel says, look, if by being, what we're referring to is the universal identity of all things as substance, or just simply the immediacy of, I am, you are, the cat is, the dog is, the sky is, my ideas are, my dreams are, my feelings are, potentials are, possibilities are, all of those use being. And if you take that form of being and you say, well, that's what we're referring to, just the immediacy of upon which all things are built, then that cannot be a thing, quite literally. Being is no thing. It cannot be a particular that you can pick out. So that's an objectivity factor to the concept of being. Here's the proof of being. So being is another name for immediacy. So immediacy is that which has no mediations. So it has, and by mediations, it means there's no middle of any kind, metaphorical, literal, physical, intellectual, meaning it has no relationships. So the foundation of all reality must be immediate, for it is what all else builds from and on, but it does not build from or on another. That which is absolutely immediate has no distinctions. What has no distinctions is not a thing. So what is immediate must be nothing. And if what I meant by immediate is not that which has no mediation, I speak of a different concept, not a different determination of the same concept. So it's like saying, well, we're talking about cats, and you say, well, my cat is blue, it's pretty hard, it's metallic, it goes, like around 120 miles an hour, and it lives on gas. Well, that's just a car. You're not talking about a cat. You're not talking about the same thing that I'm talking about. You're just playing word games. You're making what's called like a word concept fallacy. And here's one of the most scandalous things. Obviously, Hegel's an idealist. He calls himself an idealist for various reasons. This is one of them. Hegel does say explicitly that being is thought. Obviously, that does not mean thought inside your head. So what does he mean? Well, if you think about it, what we think is real is what is objective, and what is objective is what is independent. Well, it's already been established, but as far as anything that's finite, anything that's going to be in your field of experience physically, regarding your internal feelings, regarding your thoughts, all of those can be decomposed in relationship to other finite things. So they're not fully objective. If you want something that's like fully abstract, the abstract is that which is taken away from a context and doesn't require that context. No physical things can do that. No psychological things can do that. Only thought can do that. Only something like a thought construct, like a category, such as cause and effect, for example. Those aren't being referenced to anything physical or external, or in your feelings, psychological. These are purely semantic constructs. They are actually abstract. Only thought has that level of abstraction. The only thing you can abstract the external world to, if you think about it, is to whatever the quote-unquote substance of everything is, which is just being. But that being is literally just an abstraction that is no thing. It's not material. It's not temporal. It's not spatial. It's what everything else is built on. Well, what's the only other thing that actually matches this in our own experience? Thought. Thought is the only thing that can do that level of abstraction for itself as well. So being is purely abstract, and that's why it's thought, because thought is also just pure abstraction. There's a second set of abstraction to take away from, to part away from. So when you have the total substrate of reality, being, and divisions start to appear within it, distinctions, that's a process of abstraction. These things are being abstracted from being within being by the process of being. So to be is to be abstracted. So anything finite is abstract in that sense, that it is parted away from. So to that extent, what else does thought do? When you think, even with something like an abstraction like being, you say being is X, Y, Z. You're abstracting. You're breaking being into parts. You're analyzing. But these are also understood to be within and unified within being. So thought does this too. Another one, to be intelligible. Intelligibility is just something that you can understand. Well, how do you understand things? Because they're distinct, because they have a specific way of relating. So intelligibility is the conceptual interrelation of distinct particularized content. Being is interrelated articulation of itself, that is, it is present determinately as a relation of beings to being each other and to being. To be is to be intelligible. And finally, being is thought because, well, anything that you tell me that you know scientifically and that you're dead certain about what it is, what you're going to point to is a concept. You're not going to point to a sense object. If you are a farmer, for example, and you actually know what a tomato is, you're not fooled by thinking that the thing before you as a seed is the full tomato. You know that that seed contains a whole process that goes across time and space that doesn't exist just in one point. So where does all that other process exist now? You can play around with words like information and quantum fluctuations. That's just nothing but a bunch of magical thinking gobbledygook, for materialists. It's just a denial that, what you're referring to doesn't physically exist now. So it is an abstraction, which is a thought, which is a concept. To do the unity of finite of infinite, I'm not really going to go into that. Hegel is very much focused on freedom. Since there's only one absolute, the only thing that can do anything to the absolute is the absolute itself. And if you say, well, the absolute is an unconscious, like Schopenhauer does, and say, well, it's just an irrational blind will, that doesn't make any sense, because that says there's something in the absolute that the absolute did not give itself, that it's not in control of, that it doesn't set. That makes no sense. That's completely illogical, stupid. You can go ahead and say, well, that's just a brute fact. Yeah, that just means that you're a brute, that you don't think. You're a caveman. The world comes together, and it comes together by its own power, which is given to itself. That's the only way to understand it. And so Hegel's definition of freedom is just that which is self-given, that which is self-determined. Obviously, we are conscious, so whatever the universe does, it must be conscious. It has consciousness as its, internal to it, because the universe isn't subject to time like we are. So we have consciousness arise in time. The universe must have consciousness, but it doesn't arise in time. So in a way, you can say the universe is an agent, a person, blah, blah, blah. Going back, to connect back to the beginning with skepticism, how does this defeat the whole skeptical problem of, well, how do you know this or that? Well, first off, Hegel begins without presuppositions, which means we don't assume anything. That's why he begins his science of logic with being. Being is not built of anything. Being has no definition, quite literally. It's a whole bunch of nothing. We can begin with that, and we can work with that and start building up the distinctions of reality from that. The usual skeptical problems in epistemology are really stupid, because they're about like, well, how do I know that I'm not asleep right now, that this is all not just a dream? How do I know that my girlfriend loves me and that she's actually not cheating on me with Tyrone? How do I know that, I really did eat breakfast this morning? That, that I'm eating something right now. All of those are based on what I call pathological skepticism, or pathological doubt, in which you set up a problem where there is no problem. Unless reality gives you a reason to think that it's not the way that it is the way that it is, until it isn't. Because what you don't know, you don't know. So you can't assume, well, maybe the world could be the Matrix. What reason do you have to think the world is the Matrix? What has happened in your life that would, first, you have to have a valid concept of what it is that you think is true in the first place. So, You think that there's a matrix. Okay, you got to prove to me that this idea of a matrix is actually an idea itself. And it's not just some linguistic fiction of yours. Because, like I said, people can say whatever they want. They can say a bunch of nonsense. It doesn't mean that you have to take it seriously. Second is, even once you have that concept, then the issue is, okay, well, is there anything out in the world that matches it, right? So I can have a concept of like 7-dimensional gnomes, and I can give you a whole story about what their existence is like and what happens when they appear in this world. Okay, well, now the question is, does anything in the world match what I'm saying? You know, if I have this definition of a square, are there any square things in the world that match the definition, fall under it? If so, congratulations, there are squares in the world. If not, congratulations, there are no squares in the world. It's that easy. It's not really a big issue. A lot of people get like really tripped up on like, well, how do I get out of my head? Well, you're not inside your head in the first place, dummy. You're right. You learned language from your fucking parents. Your parents learned language from their fucking parents and grandparents and the community. You didn't make that up. So this whole solipsism like problem is a no-go, because if you claim the world all exists within me, but I am not the one who brought myself about, then that just means there is no me and there's just nothing but a world out there with no me in here. Solipsism really falls into the complete opposite. But anyways, that's the core of what I wanted to tell you about Hegel. I'm sorry that went on probably for a bit longer than I wanted to. But from here on, any questions or comments that people will want to bring up, I'm willing to take them.
Yeah, so we're gonna start getting into the discussion slash debate part. Um, I'm gonna bring up guests that have questions. I'm also gonna be answering or reading out questions or bringing attention to questions in the questions channel. And then like Antonio will answer. But we can also just kind of like see what the room thinks as well. Um, so yeah, we can get a bit of a lively discussion going. So I'm gonna bring up Warmy first. Hmm. All right. I think we're having trouble getting Wormy. So let's get treatment on while we wait for Wormy.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, we have a question from one of our mods.
I was the guy who jumped up earlier. Sorry if I wasn't supposed to, but I did it anyways. I'll probably do it again. Um, my question is, I actually have a question. I just want to say I really liked the thing. I really liked the discussion you guys had with the little speech. Can I get access to the slides later? Because I didn't catch all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'll link them right now.
That's really cool. Thank you. I might have a better question later, but I want to see you like get into it with some Christians. All right, I gotta go. I love you. Kiss, kiss. Bye bye.
All right, send the side chat.
Thank you.
We have quite a few questions pinned actually in the questions channel. We can start taking those in the meantime while we get some people up.
Yeah.
Hegel questions. Where is that? Okay, somebody asks, how do you know reason is part of the world? Is it because you believe it to be so? Well, I think that was covered in the presentation pretty clearly. How do you know reason is part of the world? Well, one, I'm in the world and I'm reasoning. I'm not outside the world, so that's obvious. Second is, given the definition of reason I gave, reason as structure, relationality, and ratio. One, the universe presents structure, relationality, and ratio. And I am myself as an existent in relationality and ratio, and my reason is within me in relationality and ratio with me, which means that reason is in relationality and ratio to the universe, which means that reason is within the reason of the universe. It's that simple.
We have, I think, a question from Trez that wants to come up on stage.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yo, what's up, guys?
what's up, guys?
Okay, so does Hegel have any concrete definitions for objects? Say, for example, an apple. Is it possible to know what an apple truly is, or are we at the mercy of our subjective perceptions of what an apple is?
Yeah, you can know what an apple is. Just watch it. I mean, like that's what scientists do, right? Scientists go observe things and just note down what it is they observe. You know, you take an apple seed, you plant it in the ground, you water it, you find out what soil conditions it requires, what kind of fertilizers work best, what kind of light that it needs, what kind of climate, how fast it grows, what kind of fruits it grows, and to reproduce that whole cycle. That would be the objective concept of the apple.
Okay, so observing it in nature, like the apple nature, if it acts
Yeah.
according to its nature, that's what it is.
Yeah, and its nature is going to be something that is a self-reproducing, self-generating process. If it doesn't have that, then it doesn't have its own nature. It's just a contingent object. It's an idealization of something else. So, for example, I think like all apples that we have at like a grocery store, for example, none of those are really objectively like existent. They are completely dependent upon us to like propagate them through grafts and cloning, because they don't actually grow on their own. Every time you plant an apple seed, you never know what you're going to get. We can't control apples that way.
Okay, so things that are acting in accordance to their own nature is good, right? Well, for Christians, that's what we would consider good, and then something evil would be something not according, that doesn't not act according to its nature. So I don't know if you have any comments on that. Like, if someone, instead of driving a car to work, they blow up a car or something, like they use it as a car bomb.
Yeah, I mean, like that's just a classical view.
If it's not according to its nature.
Well, like a car doesn't have its own nature. A car is just a utilitarian object that we give it its purpose. We're the ones who impose a structure upon it, but it doesn't really have a nature of its own. Perhaps the only thing you could say about it is that, like, combustion engine cars, that's the independent nature, and that those things have specific rules of physics that must be followed. You can design your car any other way you like, but if you're gonna have a combustion engine, you got to be using, pistons and, engine blocks and whatnot to contain that whole thing. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And you have to use a certain kind of fuel. I think the only things I see a problem with Christians is that they don't really have an account as to, like, how do you prove that the nature of something is its nature, right? Because, like, that's when people bring up, like, arguments against, like, Aristotelians. They're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean the purpose of a pencil is to write? Like, I can use a pencil to stab, somebody, and that's the purpose that I've used it for. So, like, what do you mean that I'm wrong to use it to stab somebody? And indeed, if you don't have a view,
you think that we create the purpose
for a pencil, absolutely,
or it has its own purpose?
Well, for a pencil, absolutely.
Yeah,
like we create the purpose for the pencil.
Yeah, things like pencils, cars, they're generally pseudo objects where, like, their meaning, their purpose depends on us, not the thing itself, or rather, the thing itself is from us. It's inherited from us. Whereas something that's properly its own, its meaning is determined by itself. So, an apple's meaning would be determined by the process of how it apples, which is different than a pen, for example, because pens don't make themselves; they don't give themselves rules.
Yeah, because if you don't have an account of independent natures, if you don't make that distinction, then anybody can argue against you with any arbitrary purposes, and they could say, well, look, cancer has the purpose of killing you. What do you mean that's bad? It's good for the cancer. That's its purpose. Whereas in a
But
Hegelian
isn't
position,
that arbitrary to say that we can use the pencil for writing or for stabbing someone?
yes,
It just opens the door to using it for
well, yeah.
anything.
Well, it is. I'm telling you that you suffer that problem if you don't have an account of independent natures. If you do have an account of independent natures, then those rebuttals don't work. Like for Hegel, like somebody saying, well, you know, we should propagate cancer because, cancer wants to live. It just happens to kill you. Well, Hegel would say, well, cancer is a false being. It's not actually a self-generative thing. It's just it's parasitic upon my being, and it's just nothing but a failure of something gone genetically wrong in my being. Like it's a form of like privation theory where cancer doesn't have a true ontological like reality, and if cancer succeeds, cancer fails. It kills its own host, and it kills itself. Whereas if a proper thing succeeds, what it does is it propagates either itself or it propagates its own kind. So its being keeps on going when it succeeds. Whereas false things, when they succeed, they fail. Which is why, like also people go like, well, what if God was actually truly evil? What if God is absolutely evil? Well, then there wouldn't be existence because evil is self-defeating.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I was getting at. Like if something doesn't act according to its nature, it doesn't even exist. I don't know. Does that make sense, or would you agree with that, or is that a Hegelian thing? Since you mentioned privation.
Well,
it makes sense. Privation theory.
It makes sense. It's not Hegel's own position. Hegel also believes in completeness and incompleteness of natures. So you can have partial natures. So, for example, whereas Christians would look upon the angels and demons and evil and say, technically it doesn't exist. Hegel said, well, no, it exists. It's just a good. Hegel looks at it from the complete other side. He looks at it as an incomplete good, where what the Hegel, what the demons and the devil are doing, or what evil people do, that's real. It's just a misusing and a misunderstanding of the reality that actually exists. It's a self-undermining reality that ultimately will destroy itself.
All right.
I think the effects are real, but then the evil itself is not real. Anyway, go ahead.
Would you like to ask one more question, Triz?
No, that was the main thing. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you for your question.
Somebody asked analytic for sure, or is there a current raised hand right
now? We could take Tree Man if you want to take Tree Man.
Nice. Go ahead.
All right. Tree Man, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 1 second. Okay. So the question that occurred to me when you were going over the UPI slides, the universality, particularity, and individuality slides, I understand that Hegel builds up his theory of judgments.
I don't know anything about that, man. I don't know anything about that. Don't ask me about that.
Okay. That's it. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, I think I've told you before. I have not read the stuff on judgments. I could not tell you. I'm not going to pretend to tell you right here.
Okay. Send me down, Dark Master.
Yeah.
But what did that have to
Alright.
do with the stuff that was presented, though?
Because you brought up the UPI thing, and I wanted to kind of help motivate the naturalness of that by looking at the judgments and saying, okay, I was going to ask you. The question I was going to ask you is, uh, d- d- Hegel lays out all these different kinds of judgments, the names of which escape me as a total list. And I was going to ask if it really becomes obvious that 3 is required, and if
The judgments are 4.
with that Trinitarian. Sorry,
The judgments are 4.
the judgments are 4, but they're about linking moments of that UPI construction, right? Like
Yeah,
this universally is yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Well, they're different linkages and like different or like subordinations of one concept or the one structure to another. But like, what does that have to do with with showing the necessity of triad? Are you just asking about why are there 4 judgments instead of 3 since the concept is only 3?
No, I was just asking, does it become because a lot of people would find that critique that you gave to derive that UPI thing, they would find that counterintuitive and strange. And as you've commented before, it's kind of unique to Hegel in the history of Western philosophy. So I was just wondering if, once you have the judgments and you look back at the UPI thing, you're like, yeah, this is how it would have to be to get kind of to make judgments make sense, I guess.
Yeah, just to ask a question to better help people intuit the slides. I understand. I get the point. But all right, we're gonna move on to the next person.
All right.
Wormy, what would you like to talk about?
So, I mean, historically, I'm kind of Heideggerian, but my question, I put it in the chat. It's just if everything is kind of the spirit figuring itself out towards this absolute, what's the difference between it's kind of like the path is set. So if you make a mistake, wasn't the mistake supposed to happen? And doesn't that mean it's kind of like meaningless? But then if the mistakes are real, then the system didn't account for that. So then, like, how do you explain the difference between those two things?
So to try to make that relevant to what I said in the presentation about skepticism, are you asking basically the issue of God's omniscience?
No, it's more just like, because if we're moving towards this absolute, spirit, like the book, my reasoning was that if you have a mistake, but the mistake was accounted for by the system, how is it a mistake? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it really a mistake because it was accounted for and planned for, and it was already the design solution?
I'll be honest, I don't want to answer questions about like the abstraction of phenomenology. You're asking a question that's like loaded with your own presuppositions about what that book is about, and I assure you that book is not about what you just asked. I can answer regarding like the relevance of that to the question of God's omniscience and related to like how we can know about that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so like God's omniscient, he already knows everything, so why did he make everything as it is, right? A lot of people don't know this. I don't know if you've thought about this. You're aware that like in the Abrahamic religion's dogmas, like thought and being are the same thing for God. So whatever God knows is the facts. And since God is not like just merely a receptive receiver of the facts, but the creator of the facts themselves, God's knowledge is the creation of this world itself, right? So like God creates a world. In the Hegelian picture, God is the absolute. The absolute is absolutely free. It's perfect love, and what love wants is other free beings. So in order for God to know, properly speaking, other free beings, he has to make beings exactly of the kind that we are with the world that we have. where we do the things that we do, because the whole point is just like, if you ever write poetry or you read a book or write fiction or anything, you get a sense that these things at a certain level have their own independence. They have their own rhythm going on once you begin the whole thing. Why would you then interfere with any of that? The story goes where the story goes, of its own account. Even though, yes, you are the writer, you are the creator of that world. That world in a certain way has its own logic once you start it, and of its own account sets up all of the relationships.
It's more like if you were writing a book and you wrote a certain sentence, and that sentence was interpreted in a way that you didn't really, intend. And to you, you look at it and you go, "Oh, that was a mistake. I could have written that in a better way." But from my understanding of this system, how do you account for just making like a genuine mistake?
You don't. There are no mistakes. God has made no mistakes. The universe makes no mistakes. Everything is happening exactly as intended, with the intention being that the things in that world go about their own way. There is no problem. You can't, as a skeptic or as an agnostic or somebody who doesn't have an absolute standpoint, you cannot raise anything against such a position, because that would require that you make a counterclaim that you have that actual position, but you don't. Like there's what appears to us, and there's like what's actually the case. So we can be completely comfortable in saying we have certain absolute facts, but we don't know all the absolute facts. And obviously somebody does. The universe does. Whether we ever find out that mystery, it's a completely different issue about whether that's good or bad. Like, reason tells us that it cannot essentially be bad. And whatever seems bad to us, it's really just a process playing out. And, I mean, look at our own world, right? Well, what is the number one source of all the misery in our world? It's not nature, it's not physics, it's us. It's humans being humans. And, if you want to blame God for that just seems stupid to me, right? Like, humans know what they're doing. They know that they're pissing other people off. They know that they hurt other people. They don't care. That's human ignorance. That's human arrogance. And, I mean, if you must have experienced this. I experienced this. I remember when I was a fucking, 14-year-old who thought I knew better than my fucking parents about the world. Because, I was savvy and I had the internet and I read, the up-to-date news, and obviously I was stupid.
So would it help for me if Antonio touched on the Hegelian standpoint of the whole, free will versus determinism type of type of problem, right? Because it sounds like to me what you're talking about is to do with, well, how can we have free will, right? How can we have free will? But also, this is part of a plan. That's my sense of what it is you're asking.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Oh, well, the free will thing, it's a whole other issue, man. I have a whole presentation on that. Like, the fundamental problem, the fundamental problem there, the fundamental problem there, man, is that you have to settle what is freedom, which is the whole issue in itself, and what is the will, which is the whole issue in itself. And these two things don't come together immediately in common perception. People say free will, they don't understand that it's a compound concept. And to bring that compound together, you first need to verify that each one is even a thing. Because, I mean, freedom, as I said in the presentation, freedom is just self-determination. Now, what the hell does the will have to do with self-determination? Well, the will, in the way that most people talk about it, isn't a form of self-determination. It's contradictory to them. because they both say that they are driven by their will, that they think that their wills collapse into their desires. And they're like, well, I had to, continue with my addiction because, I was driven by my desires, my cravings dominate over me, a certain man from a certain island who supposedly hung himself in a certain jail cell, would have said, well, my desires, for money, fame, and power, and, sexual deprivation are what led me to do what I did. And then other certain cases, people will go and say, well, no, I decided to do this or that, but what they really mean is like, I had the desire to do. So they make no distinction between their desires and being compelled to, and then just like their desires being identical to their very self. In either of those cases, in that if that's what you mean, then the whole idea of the will doesn't even make any sense, because the whole idea of will is that there's some kind of choosing. But how do you choose? Well, if the choice is just simply between the stronger desire and a lower desire, weaker desire, the stronger always wins. So what choice is there? There is no choice. And if the whole thing is like, well, I just don't feel any resistance to my desires because I'm one with my desires, then there is also no choice. So in either case, there's no will.
I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's just hard to justify anything if there's no freedom of any of it.
But nobody said there's no freedom. I said there's no will, by the common conception of it. Now, if you understand the will in the way that like Hegel understands it, Hegel thinks that the will is a rational comprehension of things. It's not just my feeling to do something. Insofar as I will something, I need to be conscious of what I'm willing, and conscious of what it is. How that's what like the standard we have in court, right? In a courtroom, we have to prove intent to do certain things. It's the difference between like murder and manslaughter, for example. Manslaughter is unintentional. You did it. You didn't intend it, but you did it. And then murder is intentional. You were conscious of what you were doing. You deliberately did it. In that case, the will rests.
This is by design.
Well, Hegel's system just derives it at that certain point, that the will is the understanding of my own reason and the understanding of the distinction of my reason in the world. And the will is aware of pure a priori concepts. The will wants truth. The will wants happiness. The will wants recognition, justice, all these things. So the will has its own desires as the will, which is what makes it free. So, for example,
it's food for thought. I just don't agree with the concept. Like even Hegel himself would have been under the presupposition of God or the Almighty Being.
What the fuck are you talking about? Did you not listen to the discussion? Well, the presentation.
I did, but what I'm saying is even the will itself, right?
You can say that, but you don't know that. Why do you want to argue against something that you don't know?
Oh, I don't want to argue at all. I just want to understand better.
But you are arguing. You're like, well, I don't think he's right. Based on what?
It's just based on the fact that because that was given to us by this guy under the system that he has put forward, it's basically saying, well, even the idea of my system was already like preordained or,
you don't know that.
No
you
mistake.
Don't know that. You don't know that.
That's fair.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know why you want to argue these things. When you don't know something, your whole position should be, I'm a student, and, I'm going to listen. And that's about it. I can tell you what, certain abstract... Obviously, I can't prove anything to you. We're having a very quick discussion. But don't judge things negatively until you've actually looked into them. If you don't feel interested, then that's fine. Don't feel interested. But then also don't say, well, I think that's wrong. Well, because you don't know what you're talking about, right? I'm not going to tell you that I think Heidegger is wrong in any serious sense, because I haven't read any Heidegger. I'm not going to bother with it. As a matter of fact, I think Heidegger is mostly right, probably, about many things, from what I know. Anyways, some people have asked me some interesting stuff in text. I'm going to answer some of those questions.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.
We also have a voice, somebody that wants to come up soon, so we can do that in a minute.
Let me answer this one. It's a set of questions from a Marxist. So he wants to know about. He says, if matter is only a concept, why does it resist us in practice? Again, in the talk, pay attention to the fact that every material object is a particular material object. You never interact with matter as such. When it is said that matter is only a concept, that's what it means. That matter is as matter, just the pure unformed matter of which everything is nothing but a particular instance of. That matter is an abstraction, so it is only a thought. And they ask, following that, aren't our ideas fundamentally material? And the answer is no. It's not a single idea that's fundamentally material, like at least the logical ideas. No. Well, actually, no. Properly speaking, all ideas are not material. Being, nothing, becoming, those are not material. They reference no matter, they reference no space-time. They are just purely semantic. Cause and effect, purely semantic. Concepts, purely semantic. Form and content, purely semantic. Essence and appearance, purely semantic. There's nothing physical about these. The only reason you could say that you believe that they're physical is because you make a mistake of thinking that because thinking is happening within a brain, that somehow then whatever's happening within the brain must be identical with the substrate of the brain. But there's no reason to think that, really. Somebody asked, let me answer another quick question. So somebody asked, how does the universe know when I say that, regarding what I said about the omniscience thing? Knowledge in Hegel's definition, it's twofold. There's cognitive knowledge, and then there's knowledge, which is just pure determinacy. So say, the structure of cause and effect is a knowledge of the absolute. Not only is that I have cognitive knowledge in my mind, the pure representational forms, linguistically, semantically, but it's also a knowledge in the absolute itself, in that it's a determination, because knowledge in the ontological sense is just determination. It's a determinacy, it's a structure, definition, whatever you want to call it. And by that I just mean it has a definite structure, definite movement. They also ask, what do I mean by universe? I don't feel like it's a necessary concept. Well, by universe I just mean the absolute. In case you're an atheist, I'm not going to say God, I'll just take it to the universe. If you don't believe that the universe is the only one, that there's a multiverse, then just think the multiverse. It doesn't matter. The point is that there is an absolute. If you think that, it's just all universes outside of universes within universes, all the way down infinitely, there is a process that is itself generating these universes together. That process is a process which all of them are subject to, so they're within it. So it is the actual one verse, one domain, one world of which they're part of. So there's still a universe in that scenario. So it's a necessary concept.
Yeah. All right. So let's take up Kent Bot. He's been waiting a while. I have a feeling this one may be a little spicy, but we will take this one up.
All right.
All right. Kent Bot. Hello, welcome.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Yeah, I asked a question in the side chat. I could just read it out if you want. My question's just given the granular parameters of all nomological distribution relations for premise one of your absolute idealism argument that you present.
Look, man, I speak English. I'm going to unmute you and give you one more chance. Like, speak English or we're not talking.
Yeah, these are entry-level concepts, slow boy. How about you track in a linear fashion this time? Let's try one more time. You brain dead.
Okay, man, you're not funny. And it's not that, like I'm pissed off or anything. It's just like you're not funny. You've done this like to me like 20 fucking times over the years. A joke gets old if you repeat it too much,
A lot of word salad. All right, we can move on.
Alright, so let me answer another question on text. Somebody asks, if the absolute idea was already certain to Hegel before he wrote the logic, how can its mediation be genuine rather than a predetermined performance that seems more theatrical? Well, what is certain about it? In the Phenomenology of Spirit, for example, Hegel mentions something about this. I forget which paragraph of the preface or the introduction he does it. He specifically says, look, we wouldn't even be bothering to know anything if we didn't believe there was an absolute in the first place. To bother to know at all requires that you really do believe there is an absolute. If you didn't, you just wouldn't bother in the first place. So if you don't believe in it, then what are you doing talking about philosophy? But just because you believe in it, just because you're like, there must be something there, doesn't mean that you've already preset for yourself what it is that it's supposed to be. So Hegel can be both certain that there is an absolute, or the absolute, while at the same time having no clue yet as to what that's going to be. Mage has her hand up. Bring Mage up here.
All right, we gotta feed the trolls a bit, I think he wants to ask about
sometimes he's honest. He's what's up, Mage?
What's up, guys? It's me, Mage.
No, it's Mage. I remember you.
So I just have I'll keep it quick. A couple questions. So one question I have is for your argument regarding the definition of rationality. Wouldn't that presuppose the existence of parts and wholes, or do you just take that as fundamental?
Obviously, this is only like a basic like introduction, like presentation. I'm not going to be arguing about like, let's begin from like the beginning of the science of logic and prove that there are things, guys. Obviously not. But there's a proof. I mean, just like the...
No, I think there are things, but I don't believe in parts or wholes. I believe in just absolute simplicity. There's only simples. So that's why I asked the question.
Oh, well, you can't, because like you have the issue of sense certainty. So in sense certainty, it's exactly, in the phenomenology, that's exactly what sense certainty thinks. There's only singular simples, and all I have to do is point to them, to claim my knowledge, this here and now. But then you're in contradiction. One, because the very act of pointing out is itself not simple. So the very methodologies, whether you physically point out or whether you verbally point out or you give it a name as a word, it doesn't matter. You're mediating what's supposed to be utterly immediate and what's supposed to be accessible immediately. So that claim on the structure of the world doesn't work.
You're saying the act of pointing out a simple is not itself simple?
Yeah, it's not simple. It's a mediation. Yeah.
It can be boiled down to simples.
No, it can't. Because if there's the simple thing and there's me, there's two, and then there's a pointing, there's three. So if I claim knowledge, absolute knowledge,
you believe you're
it is not simple.
Why?
Are you not simple?
Or sorry, like when you say there's the simple, there's me, and then there's the act of pointing out. I'm saying that you can boil all of those objects. There's the simple, which you don't have to boil down further, but you and the act of pointing out can be boiled down to a set of simples.
That's literally what I just said. I said there's a simple, there's a me, the knower, who's also simple, and there's a pointing which is also simple. Is that whole thing now? Because the reference
Why
there
do you
is not.
believe you're a simple?
Well, hold on. Well, we're not
I don't
getting
think
into
you're a
that.
simple. Oh, okay.
I don't care. Like Nage, if you say that I'm not a simple, then your whole claim on knowledge doesn't work, because the claim here is not about a particular thing that I have just arbitrarily decided to, like, put a boundary around and say, well, this is the only thing I'm actually talking about. You can't do that. Like, knowledge is either knowledge of everything or it's not. You either have knowledge that's absolute or you don't. So are you making a claim on the world or are you not making a claim on the world?
I'm making a claim on the world, but I think that when you invoke objects like me,
you don't have to call it me.
Like, it's a Okay, yeah, just the set of simples that you would speak of when you speak of you. That's what I'm talking about.
You can't talk about sets. Sets aren't simple. Sets are collections which are already complex.
Yeah, wait, no, sets are themselves objects. Okay, that's fine. I'll just go to my other question. What does Hegel believe math is?
Math? The regular thing that
I
people
don't think
do.
you understand the question, but that's
well,
okay.
No, I don't think you understand the answer, Nage.
I don't think you understand the question, but
Well, I mean,
it's okay. That's why I'm going to the other one.
You say that you're talking about a simple claim on the world, and then you don't understand that the system that you're pointing out, even if it's a one object system, is literally impossible to make simple because it's minimally 3.
Wait. Simple doesn't mean singular, like a single object. It just means the only objects that exist are irreducible. It doesn't mean that there's one object that exists. There's a multitude of
what is irreducible here?
A simple.
That's just circular. What is it? I got you.
How is it circular? A simple is
No.
just something irreducible.
I got you. Tell me, what is the simple here? So if the simple is complex, how is it simple?
It's not complex. What do you mean?
So
it's
then
definitionally irreducible.
Yeah, you say irreducible. Irreducible to what? In what way?
In the sense that it only interacts with itself upon itself.
Mm-hmm. So if it interacts with itself, it's its activity and its substance the same?
Is activity, say that again?
If it only interacts with itself, is its activity and its substance the same?
Sorry. Let me correct my definition. It can interact with other things, insofar as those other things aren't comprising the simple. So I guess an example would be like atoms were considered simple at some point, but we know that there's other things within the atom interacting in itself, like it has parts.
What do you mean?
I just mean something that's not composed of parts.
Okay, so you have two different definitions that they're not the same. One of these things is irreducible simplicity. So for example, atoms, we can say, are irreducibly simple. There's a certain point at which, like, whatever you do, if you go below that, you just don't have an atom anymore. So that means that whatever the ontological structure of atoms is, it's irreducibly simple at that level. But now you're saying it's irreducible simplicity with just regards to the categories of parts and wholes in the first place, which is what I was referring to in the first place. So which is it? Those are not the same thing.
The second one. Yeah, the second one.
Okay, so then my original critique holds. You're trying to talk about a world in which things supposedly are not decomposable and that all you have is simples, and you are going to claim knowledge that is itself simple. But if the world itself is not simple because it's a complex, it's a collection of simples.
Right, yeah. The world is a collection of simples.
Okay, and so when you're making absolute knowledge claims, it's a claim on the world. It's not a claim on an arbitrary simple that you want to like pretend that that's the only one that works.
When you have simples arranged in certain structures, or are related to other simples in certain, I guess, novel ways, that's what you're quantifying over when you make propositions about the world.
Yeah, I don't
You're not
care.
quantifying over over the symbols themselves.
Yeah, I don't care about your word salad. It doesn't
If
matter
you
to
think
me.
that's word salad,
It
then
it is word salad. Yeah.
I could just say your presentation is word salad, and we don't go anywhere. So
you
if
can, but
if that's where you want to end the discussion, that's
you
fine.
can, but like I'm like Chomsky, I use monosyllabic words. I don't hide myself behind erudition.
I didn't do that. I just don't think you are honest
The
enough to want
concepts
to try and
stand and
understand.
fall. The
You
concepts
just
stand
don't
and
think,
fall on their own
Mitch.
merits. All right, we have run to the end of this this dialogue script. So respectfully, I
There's a
will
few others.
move you back. Yeah. Let's do Mobius next. Mobius, you've been waiting a while. Let's see. All right. All right. What questions you got?
Well, I could have a bunch of so many things, but I mean, like, I'll just pick one of the stuff I want to talk about. Like, apparently, you don't like the idea of solipsism because, and that kind of goes to the theme of this destroying skepticism, where, the ultimate skeptic would be a solipsist, or like a slight extension of that would be
I disagree with
brain in
that.
a vat or a Boltzmann brain or matrix.
No, those are not skeptics at all. Those are dogmatists.
What?
Because the skeptic just makes
Oh,
no claims.
well, I
The
mean,
skeptic just says they don't
just
know.
attached. Right. Right. Okay. So maybe that's not connected to that word, but you did say something about like how could you say that you're from the Matrix or not a brain in a vat when you just know that your parents made you. I mean, you grew up or whatever, and then you had like memories, and you're saying to say otherwise is nonsense. Did you say that?
Yeah, I did. The argument is that in order for you to problematize what exists, you need to have an actual reason to do so. You can't just like say what if.
But don't we say what if in any case? Like, there's no way to actually really know that all your experiences, or you can even say your present state right now, and while you're thinking about your past, whatever, all that stuff was not instantiated like 3 seconds ago or something.
That's just
that's not the case, and that's fine.
Well, no.
But to
See,
say with certainty.
That's false. So you can't actually say that what if. You don't even know what the fuck that would mean. Like you can verbally say that, but you don't actually have any semantic content behind it.
Well, I mean, to say that there's like a non-zero chance, you can't say that's not the case that we're in.
I absolutely can.
It's not.
I absolutely can.
It's not something. But with certainty.
Yes, it's the exact same thing as I will tell you. There's a that there is an absolutely zero chance that there are square circles by definition.
Yes, but when you say something like something can't be true or not true at the same time, like the law of non-contradiction, sure, if it's that type of idea, I would agree.
All the ideas of that
we're
kind.
in the Matrix is not a violation of that sort.
No, it is.
Like, the
ultimate
violation would be a P and not P, sure. But it's not a P and not P.
The Matrix is that kind of violation. All violations are that kind because the Matrix is a claim upon the world. You are making an absolute claim about the nature of reality. In order for you to substantiate that claim, there's two things you need to do. One, you need to tell me that thing you're claiming is a thing. The Matrix is actually a thing. You cannot just abstractly say that.
I'm not making claims.
Well, no, I'm not saying you. I'm saying you, you in general.
The traditional narrative.
I'm just saying you in general. So I'm not saying specifically.
I'm saying your narrative, not mine. I'm questioning any narrative, whether it's brain in a vat or Matrix or the traditional story.
It doesn't matter to me. I don't care about the stories.
So I'm questioning you're the one that's making the claim.
I know. I'm substantiating
but
why.
You're making the story that. How can you not
I'm
believe that?
I'm substantiating why the other alternatives aren't actually alternatives at all. In order for you to make the claim about, not you, but you in general, let me finish. So in order for somebody to make that claim, they need to, one, substantiate that this thing, the matrix, is even a thing in concept, to do that, you need to give me an entire account of the world originating from a matrix. You can't give me a story.
Well,
you know the Matrix movie. That's not a theory. That's not a concept of the world.
No. I mean, but it just, a matrix would be a metaphor for any type of simulation.
Metaphors are
like,
not world
anything
concepts.
that's not...
Bro, listen to me. Metaphors are not world concepts. Stories are not world concepts.
Okay.
When you're making a claim upon the world, you need to substantiate that world in full. You can't just go like 1/100th of the way and say, well, I got a reason.
But
in full.
You can have an idea to say, okay,
no,
what
you
you're
can't.
experiencing is not real, like a dream world. You can't
No,
say
you
the word
can't.
dream world?
No, you can't. What difference?
Can you say anything about something that's not the case?
No, you can't, because it's not the case.
Like, but it's not so much that even that the case itself you're saying is the case could be something that's not true in itself. So when you make the claim, okay, this is the actual case, what's going on, where you could say, if you're looking at your monitor right now, your computer monitor, it's made in a factory, and the Earth that you're on was made in the Big Bang or whatever, like with atoms, and those atoms were made in the Big Bang. Like, so you're creating this narrative, right? But I could just say, that's not the case. And you have to say, how can you substantiate that is something that is real?
Well, hold on.
And that you're actually describing this mechanism perfectly.
Well, hold
right?
on. So you're setting up two issues. Wait, bro, you're setting up two issues. They're different. So one of these issues is you want me to give you a positive account, which is a much harder one, and I agree, it's much harder.
Well,
but then the other one you're pointing out is
making
like,
me do that.
Well,
I don't have to describe what the Matrix
bro.
is.
I'm not making you do that. I'm saying that anybody who makes the counterclaims needs to do that. So the other issue that you mentioned right now, which is the negative one, was like, well, what if like the whole story about the Big Bang is wrong? What if I deny that? Well, let me tell you, I deny the Big Bang. Do I deny that because I think some alternative is true? I don't need to believe in some other alternative. I just need to know that the story that I'm being given is logically incoherent, which it is.
Well,
and that's why I don't believe in the Big
like
Bang.
You don't believe in the Big Bang?
Yeah, I don't believe in the Big Bang. It's just fiction.
So,
it's unscientific.
Well, it's not.
It is.
Okay, well, it's very.
It is.
It's based on general relativity. It's the implications of general relativity.
Do you even know what the actual basis is? Besides a hand wave, do you know what the actual basis is?
In terms of what truth is, we only have two things. We have two things, which is, in my mind, pointing us in the right direction. A lot more.
No. Do you know what? Wait, bro. Okay. Do you know the actual scientific basis of the Big Bang? Not a hand wave of relativity. Yeah. Do you know the actual experimental basis?
It's general relativity.
No, that's a hand wave. That's just.
That's
a hand wave. That's a hand wave. What is the experimental basis?
Not a hand wave.
What is the experimental basis? There's two major.
Receding from us, and you get a redshift.
Okay, that's one. Okay, that's one.
You get if you take the observations.
Okay, that's one. There's another one. Which one is it?
Predictions of general relativity. You get the Big Bang.
Okay, so one of them. Yes, I know.
What I said.
Yes, I know. You mentioned the microwave, the redshift.
General relativity is the main thing.
No, it's not. You mentioned the redshift.
Can you let me fucking...
No, I'm responding to what you said. I'm not gonna fucking let you monologue. So okay, so you mentioned redshift, and the other one is the microwave background radiation. Yes. As far as the redshift is, we know that's literally an interpretation. That's not a fact. We know from the very beginning this is an interpretation. So it's not a fact. No, it's an interpretation of what it means. There is a redshift, yes, but what it means is a complete interpretation, and any good scientist will tell you that. Second, the microwave background radiation is also.
Envision what that is.
Well, it's not. It's not. So second, the microwave background radiation, we also know that is also massive interpretation. There is not what was predicted by the Big Bang, by the way, because we're in the middle of a galaxy. We don't actually have a vision of a uniform microwave background radiation. That's not what we see. Every image you ever seen of that shit is literally run through a shitload of algorithms, which are nothing but mathematics. So the evidence that you're appealing to is literally nothing but sociological fiction, because you're jabbing, brother. So the evidence you're appealing to is nothing but sociological fiction.
You're synthesizing.
I'm not synthesizing
You're
anything.
synthesizing.
Are these or are these not interpretations?
hold
Are
on.
these or
What
are
you're
these
doing-
not interpretations? Are these or are these not interpretations? Yes or no?
No, they're not interpretations.
Okay, man.
What-
So I'm
what you're
dealing
doing is
with a
taking all the
religious
data-
nut job. Okay, I'm dealing with a religious nut
data-
job then. Okay, okay,
No.
man. Keep thumbing your Bible. Let's move
No,
on from
no,
that. Okay,
I'm
what
not-
else do you have?
I'm an
And
atheist. I'm an
yes,
atheist.
yes, you're a religious nut job. I don't care
Okay.
about your religion.
I'm just saying that the data, when it comes
There
to light
there is
coming
no
in,
data as
which
far
is
as
the microwave
interpretation.
microwave light, along with light coming in.
There is
from the
no
red source,
data
it's
as far as
data
interpretation.
coming in that you interpret.
Okay,
You
so there's the
interpret this
story.
through the equations.
Well, I think
Yeah,
the
so there's a
point-
story.
Yeah, these things in physics, right?
But
These things in physics, and funnily
okay.
enough, we actually
they
have our
match.
friend.
Okay. Can I just say one thing?
Hold on.
Can I say one thing?
No, you can't. You've been talking, man.
Hold on. So, not to put anybody on the spot, but we actually have our friend Avalonia here, who's a trained physicist, and even he would say that like these theories in physics, right? These are not absolute things. These are empirical models, largely, right? But let's move on to something that's more constructive. Is there something else you want to ask, Mobius? Go ahead.
It's not Big Bang related. I mean, sure. I mean,
Yeah, we were talking about
I don't know what-
solipsism.
I don't know how we went.
What
towards that.
else?
Okay. So, and I said you said I should have like a coherent story of what Brain in Nevada or what the Matrix is, or
It's
even that
not just coherent.
Right?
It's not just
I don't
coherent.
have to have this concrete. But I don't have to have that. All I have
You-
to do
you
is
do.
point in a story.
You do.
I can't say the word story.
No, you do have to have a concrete
So
concept.
that's
Like
what you're doing. Like in your own
Bro,
story.
wait, hold on.
When
Like,
you have
so
a story of whatever story you have. Can I finish a fucking statement? Like you always interrupt me.
Well, you're yammering, dude. Like I get it. Like I know your
I'm
point,
not.
but
I'm trying
what
to,
is it
like,
that you're trying to say?
You make an objection, and I make a counter.
Yeah, and then when
I
I'm
make
making
a
my
counter to the
objection, you
objection,
also
and you
don't
stop
let me
me.
finish. Yeah, and when I'm making my counter, you also don't let me finish. I mean, we're both equal on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Can I make a statement?
Well, let me
Okay,
summarize
your
that
objection
point.
Was that I need to have?
So, go ahead.
Okay, so go ahead, and then I'll go after. But
Okay,
are you,
so-
I'm assuming you're gonna let me make a statement. Yes
yeah,
or no?
yeah. So let me summarize the
Okay,
issues so that
right
we don't
now.
waste the time. Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead first, and then I'll make the statement.
All right. Okay, I'll go. So my point
Okay.
is.
Okay. So,
Okay, gee, which one is going, man? You or me?
are you gonna let me go?
I give
Okay,
you the
you
time,
go
and then
first.
you, okay.
But you said go, and then went, and you started talking. So, are you gonna go? If not,
Well,
then
no, I mean, like, there's a delay. Like, when you stop talking, and like, there's a delay of like 2 seconds. I'm like, okay, is it you're waiting for me, or am I waiting for you? Which is it?
my
Yeah,
ping is
there
13
may also be
milliseconds.
some
Okay.
connection problems.
No, it's not. My ping is 13 milliseconds. Okay, but okay, I'll tell you. Can you let me go right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Now, what you said, okay, before is that I have to make a justification for any type of explanation of my present state. So if I say simulation or whatever, you have to say, it has to be coherent. But if you're gonna say that your story of, your parents, like you said before, that your parents gave birth to you, blah blah, these memories, and the Earth, was formed, or whatever story you want to make, like you have to be held to the same standard, because your picture will not be completely coherent and a complete picture in the same way mine is not a complete picture when I say simulation. Okay, so how are you supposed to compare? How could you say that you're definitively not in a type of brain in a vat simulation or a matrix or something? You can't say that, right?
I can. I know because one, the story that you're telling me is not coherent. Like not because. Wait,
So
hold on.
it's
Let me
yours
finish.
is-
Let me finish. So the issue of the coherence is not that you haven't given me every empirical detail of the story. That's not the problem of coherence. The problem is conceptual coherence from an absolute standpoint. The world as such, if you tell me that it's going to be a matrix, you need to give me an actual complete derivation from the a priori metaphysical principles down to that to show me that your world is actually the world that is going to be the case. And then once you have that concept,
again,
well, let me
you
finish.
made
Bro,
a euphemism
let
for
me
simulation.
finish. Let me finish. You told me that I gave you the time.
Okay.
Give me the time,
I thought
please.
you were finished. Go ahead.
So when we do that,
okay.
we have then the concept. So first you need to prove that this is even a thing. And then we look out in the world and look for evidence that that thing is even there.
Sure. And so, again, I use the word matrix as a simulation. I mean, a euphemism for simulation, just like the idea of something constructed. And in terms of a construction, which is not like a concrete idea of how the construction operates, it's just that a construction could occur, and that's not too far fetched because we make constructions.
It
all the
is
time.
far-fetched.
With
It
video
is
games,
far-fetched.
making worlds, the virtual reality.
It is far-fetched.
It is far-fetched to say construction.
Bro,
if you're
that's like
talking
saying,
about
like, look, man, I make like
we could
clay
call it the
dolls and
Matrix, we could call it
stuff.
simulations. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, that's going like make the jump from like I make clay dolls to like, oh well, that's how God did it too. God just made everything out of clay and breathed life into it. You think it's that simple? You think that's how the world works? You're crazy.
But no, but I'm just saying that everybody can only make assumptions as to how we got here and the story. It's
They don't
to make
have
things
to.
absolute.
You don't have to.
Like you can't say things with absolute certainty.
You don't have to.
And all you can do is make approximations. And
Yeah, but you don't have to. That's the problem.
In my view, you don't have to make approximations.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to be telling yourself this story about the world when you don't know about the world. I'm somebody who I admit I don't think we know. Wait, hold on.
About the world.
Well, exactly. So then, what's the problem? So why worry about it? So, for example, I say that the Big Bang is false. But I don't know what the actual physics is. I just know whatever they're telling us the physics is. That's not the case.
Yeah. Well, you could outright say it's not 100% correct, and there's no way anybody can claim it's 100% correct. But the thing is, if you're trying to compete that with another like God type Genesis or whatever,
you don't have to compete with it.
I would say that Big Bang story is more coherent.
Yeah, but you don't have to compete with it.
Alternative Genesis claim that's not the Big Bang.
No. I literally told you. I am one of the people who I think that most of what we claim to know, we don't actually know. I don't think we know what was going on even like 2,000 years ago. We have whatever's left in written history. Yeah, you don't have to make a claim.
So
what is that?
Dinosaurs were like lived 65 million
What does
ago?
that have to do? What does that have to do with my life, bro? If dinosaurs existed 6 billion years ago, or they didn't, what does that have to do with your life? What changes? Do you stop going to work? Are you going to not need money?
It makes a story.
Are you going to stop eating? Yeah, but so what? So what?
The same reasoning that you're using. That
can you not live without fictions?
Dinosaurs or otherwise.
Can you not live without fictions? Do you need a religion?
But no. But the thing is, there's no way. Okay, in terms of in principle, everything is a fiction, but some things are more probable than others. And with science,
they're not.
They use probabilities in terms of
probability is nonsense.
Okay?
Probability is like fucking faith for scientists, man.
The Big Bang.
Probability is just faith.
You can make probabilities.
No, you can't.
For example,
probability is faith.
In terms of scientific theory on which things like a Big Bang are based, I'll just kind of illustrate that in a very pure form. Where let's say the theory of gravity, when you drop a rock, what are the probabilities it's going to fall when you let go of it from your hand?
Is that based on probability? Is that based on probability?
Over and over again.
Wait, is that based on probability?
Yes, you could say what's the probability?
No. Like, is that actually based on probability? Is there a single time that anybody observed anything else?
Yeah.
When?
Well, I'm saying it's possible that it could.
What do you mean it's possible if it's never been observed? Nobody's ever observed a fucking rock that's being dropped from like 10 feet above and doesn't fall.
Exactly. So I'm saying.
So what do you mean probability? Wait. What do you mean probability? The probability. There's no probability. It's 100% certain.
Absolute claim. I'm not. It will fall. Probabilistically, it will fall because you know that if I throw a rock in like forward, it's going to follow an arc all the time towards the equations of motion of Newton, and that's not a coincidence.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
Point of physical
But that's not a story.
You can extrapolate that.
But that's not a
You could
story.
extrapolate that all the way to the Big Bang.
No, it isn't. You
But
don't go from gravity
just,
to the Big
like,
Bang, dude.
Science is about patterns. Okay, if it
There
always
is-
follows the same pattern,
there is
there's
no
something to this
pattern.
pattern.
Do you know the pattern they use to interpret redshift?
there's
The
not a
pattern. Yeah, do you know the pattern they use to interpret redshift? The way that we relate to sound waves. Now, what the hell does that have to do with light? When we know light is literally
Okay.
not like sound.
Well, actually, redshift is a real phenomenon where if you have a space going faster or anything moving faster, you'll have a shift in the light. That proves that it's actually receding away. And there's been experiments.
What do you mean? What do you mean? It proves that it's receding away.
elongation.
Do you know about Halton Arp and inherent redshift? Halton Arp was one of the top astronomers in the 80s who noticed these anomalies in the images that we were getting, where we had high redshift objects, quasars, which were supposed to be the most distant and ancient objects, which had visible physical connections to very near galaxies. So what do you mean that it's so obvious that the redshift is a Doppler effect when it is not?
Well, I mean, when it comes to the speed of galaxies versus quasars, I mean, like, I'm not sure to what extent they were seated in the same way or move in the same way or whatever. Maybe there's a way, something that's restricting them, that's skewing the redshift. But the redshift implies that it's going faster. The faster
Well,
you
that's
go,
an
the
interpretation
longer the
because
redshift.
you're analogizing it to something
So,
that it's not.
But what would you think? But when you look all around you, all 360 degrees all around the Earth, and things are moving faster and faster, wouldn't you think that there's some sort of expansion going on?
No.
Like,
Do you
it just
understand
seems
that?
like
Do you understand it wasn't
normal
until the
inference to do
50s?
that.
Well, wait, hold on. Do you understand that it was not until the 50s that the Big Bang became generally accepted? So even when redshift was discovered in the 20s, it wasn't until the 50s, with and particularly the 60s, with the microwave background, that it became the dominant theory. Before that, steady state universes were dominant.
Well, I mean,
with redshift in account. So what do you
that's
mean?
right.
It's so obvious that because of redshift, therefore Big Bang. No.
No. I mean, what you have to do first is just observations of the redshift. You combine it with the theory of general relativity, and then you get the output of that thing. It is like there has to have been some really hot, dense, infinitely with something with infinite curvature, a little dot from which everything occurred. Even though, again, the general relativity, those theories break down at the actual point of the singularity. So once we go below 10 to the power of like 43 trillionth of a second or whatever.
This is all religious mumbo jumbo, man.
We don't know what the equations do.
This is all religious mumbo
But
jumbo.
I'm saying we could extrapolate backwards with the equations. We could extrapolate backwards down to a split second after the Big Bang, 10 to the minus 43 or whatever. And at that point, you get singularities where you have infinite curvature and.
Okay, man, you're yapping. You're yapping.
I think we.
Okay.
We may,
but first, okay, I'm just saying you can extrapolate backwards. Okay, and then the reason why they're doing this.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we're done.
Well,
This
you
has
can
gone.
do
This has gone too
fits in with the
tangential.
general
It's too tangential,
equations
man.
To do that.
This is too tangential now.
gonna move on. Yeah, we're gonna. I'm sorry. Respectfully, we're gonna move on from the science pro stuff. Let's see. So, Abysmal, I believe you've had a question. I'll go pre-land and Flanders probably after that. Oh. I think Abysmal dropped his request for now. So you can go pre-land if you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Antonio, for the presentation. Hold on, let me find the question real quick, because I had a bunch and I only want to do one so I don't take up too much time. Yeah.
Take. I got a few. I got at least like 50 more minutes.
Oh yeah, that was my question. I kind of heard it like referenced to a little bit. Does Hegel's philosophy imply that infinity is real? I guess is what I was asking.
Yes, but not quantitative infinity. So for Hegel, infinity is qualitative unboundedness. Quantitative endless series don't exist because you can always add once more, one more.
Okay, I think that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Uh, Overall, I mean, let's see, is there anything else that I want to add before I head off? I'd say there's a little one thing that I noticed is that it seems like sometimes Hegel, at least sometimes, it might have just been me misunderstanding, but sometimes it sounds like it goes a bit circular in ways. Do you understand what I'm kind of saying with that?
I mean, well, like Hegel like has a philosophy that's circles of circles, but like what kind of circles?
Just kind of like even from the very base. Sorry, I'm not a philosopher. I'm a CS major.
Mm.
But I remember in the beginning you were talking about like what was it? The dilemma of the
Criterion.
not constraint, the other term.
Criterion.
Criterion. Thank you. Uh, where Hegel is, yeah, where Hegel is a solution to that, or at least a way to address that. And the issue with that, of course, is that any criterion must, of course, require a criterion. That was the whole cusp of that. But then wouldn't
Mm.
Hegel's in some way also require a criterion of its own? In other words, for Hegel to present this line of thinking, he would have to have his own line of thinking, basically. Right.
Mm.
And I could hear like that's kind of where I saw a lot of the circularity kind of going on because it feels like from that basic point, he Hegel kind of needs to justify his own reasoning. And I feel like sometimes that kind of muddies up some of the like greater points and some other points, if that makes sense. I don't know what your thoughts on that
Yeah.
would be.
Well, I think that's a misunderstanding. So at least in the phenomenology spirit, for example, he has no criterion. He just goes and says, we're just going to take other people's criterions and like work through them. Obviously, the meaning of working through them is not obvious to most people because his way of working through things is the way that you ideally should work through anything. I mean, it's the ideal of science. In science, when you do an experiment, you want to isolate the variable
Ideally, yes.
and the constraints to their purity and
Would
just
there
deal
ever,
with that. And so Hegel does that conceptually. And so when a lot of people say, yeah, but that's not what so-and-so is saying. Well, it doesn't matter what so-and-so is saying. They weren't running a pure experiment on their categories. Hegel is. And so if he can show that there's a contradiction or that there's a certain structure that comes about from that, it is what it is. I mean, what is there to dispute with the facts other than, you might claim, well, I think the experiment doesn't really work that way. Well, run the experiment yourself. If you can get different results, that will be amazing. Certainly be shocking. But that requires no criterion of your own to do that. That just requires that you actually just run
does that
experiments
mean
properly.
then? Okay. Does that mean then that more or less, if I understand it, Hegel doesn't really specify a criterion, just more a method of discussing criterion. But does this does technically mean that it could technically be possible for Hegel's methodology to be either proven wrong or superseded by another methodology? Is that correct?
At the beginning, I
No.
mean, you could say that in that maybe there is a criterion in which what you discover is that there's a critique of like the very process of how you're doing this. But then that would have to be immanent to that criterion, which would require the structures Hegel's working anyways, which is an immanent, construction and deconstruction and deduction, analysis and synthesis of all the positions. So I mean, basically the only way you could prove Hegel wrong is by doing Hegel better.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
if
kind of
I
what I was thinking. Okay,
this so this may help you out, right? This may help out a lot of people in the audience. The actual name of Hegel's method is called the speculative method. That's the proper name of his method. And it means speculative, not in the hypothesis sense, but in the literally in the to look sense, because you're looking, right? You are looking at a pure reason, but you're not assuming any content of that, right? An analogy I could give you for Hegel's method is it's like the empiricism of pure reasoning, but without assuming empiricism. That's Hegel's method. And so by that, right, if you see something, some content you're looking at that fails by its own relationships, you're looking at it, you see, okay, well, rationally this is failing by its own relationships, then you have something that's false, right? False in the sense that it fails. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that does. Thank you. I think,
Yeah.
I think that's all that I have in terms of questions. And thank you guys for your time. I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Yeah, Flanders has been waiting a while. We will let them go next.
No.
All right. Hello,
Test.
Flanders.
Yeah, we can hear.
Hey, is my mic working?
Yeah.
Cool. It might cut out. All right. Well, it's been a lot. Just a quick little recap. Since you've gone over a lot, done a lot of things, just trying to get my thoughts together. I'll go with what I can remember first. So, do you effectively agree, or do you assert that we can ascertain absolute knowledge through process of elimination?
Not
Is
through
there
a
a correct way
process
to
of
phrase that?
elimination in general. It's a very specific process of elimination of certain categories.
Okay, like I know we're basically examining, as you said, the empirical rationality. We look at something like, okay, so this fails by its own relationships. This doesn't work out. This doesn't work out. So eventually we get to one thing. Well, it has to be this because there's no other explanation that works.
It's
Am I
not just that
following
there.
what you believe closely enough?
Yeah, it's not just that there's no other. That you finally have an actual successful position that will not fall apart. So, like Hegel's absolute knowing, for example,
Okay,
is
so-
not going to be superseded by another contender because it's already a self-reflexive understanding. Like, saying, "Well, I have a self-reflexive
saying it's self-evident.
understanding." In a very peculiar way, it is self-evident. It is the thing that evidences itself. It's not evident because it fits my criteria of evidence, but because it evidences its own criterion and confirms it to itself.
Well, okay, but couldn't you just make any other model that is capable of doing that?
Verbally, you can.
Self-evident models can exist through their axiomatic properties. If I can show that A equals A and B equals B, and A equals B, then B equals A, like transitive, expressive. I forget some of the terminology, but I don't see how this is unique to Hegel.
Well, I mean, where'd you get B from A? Right, you give me A. Where'd you get B?
Okay. Okay. Well, I didn't want to get too hung up on a specific axiom, but the point being is, if we can show that there are other things as that work. Okay. Actually, no, we can focus on that. Well, again, I don't think that we can necessarily determine if there is absolute knowledge. There could be. I think that you can make a case for that. But again, that's a positive claim. You say that you can ascertain absolute knowledge via a negative claim. I don't think that's possible in either direction.
Well, I mean,
so insofar that I can know that B equals A, then that's getting off on a tangent.
Well, I understand what you're saying.
One thing worth pointing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead, DM.
I was just. Yeah. So I was just gonna say real quick, when you talk about models, right? One thing that's important to keep in mind is that Hegel's work exists in the context of being presuppositionless. So a model will have certain assumptions about, okay, well, what is it modeling, right? If you read The Science of Logic, which is Hegel's main work, in the second introduction of the Science of Logic, right, like really where the book starts, you will find the most radical breakdown of presupposition. And so you can't really do this thing of well, I have these models, that are subjective, but in the models, it's circular, because the models themselves have presuppositions, whereas like this kind of philosophical investigation, it doesn't assume philosophical content to have those issues. And in fact,
Sure.
maybe AW can get into it in a bit, but there's actually a very hard proof there's actually a very hard proof. Sorry, just to finish my thought real quick. There's actually a very hard proof where the science of logic shows what happens when you have a complete breakdown of assumption of philosophical content, right? What happens is thought literally fails to think, right? But in failing to think, there's the reflection of the failure to think, right? And that becomes, a hard grounding of where this actually begins. It's really interesting. I really encourage you to look more into it.
I mean, it's very Nietzschean of you, but again, like that sort of, you've kind of somewhat elucidated the point that Hegel is not original. This is just, he's one of a few philosophers who have decided to take the non-suppositional rational analysis approach. And I'm just like, okay, so, and I mean, if that is the case, then that leads me to believe, well, we need to examine other possibilities. Could there be a state of knowledge in which it is both absolute and non-absolute at the same time? Schrodinger's, planes of existence. Could it be so much that what we even quantify as knowing can be questioned?
But
it seems very reductive that.
But you see, okay. But you see, when you say things like that, right? Like possibility. You're assuming a lot. Like you can't do that kind of thing in this sort of investigation. Also, it's mainly the method. I mean, there are other unique things about Hegel, of course, but it is the method that is primarily unique for Hegel. I'll go ahead, Antonio.
I won't fight you necessarily on that. I'll just disagree with you.
Yeah, well, my 2 cents on that. Regarding are there possible alternative methods? Like I said, there isn't. The only way you can claim that is I'm doing Hegel better than Hegel, and you'd be doing the exact same thing. You'd be doing the exact same method. There's not going to be an empirical method that matches. No, I mean, that sounds like you don't know, and which is fine, which is why you can't tell that I don't know, but I know. So in order for you to know, you'd have to go through the process of learning this like I do.
Again, I'm happy to learn. But the issue is that I don't have to learn. I'm not required to know a correct answer to identify a wrong one, which is what you said. I'm paraphrasing.
Well, wait. What's the wrong one? So what's the wrong one here?
The wrong answer is Hegel. Like, as I think
wonderful. I mean, that's a 6,000 IQ response. Like, I mean, can you give me an actual detail? Can you be like an actual scientist here and give me a detail? Like, what is wrong?
I mean, okay, we can go over your claims again. Hegel might be right. I'm not going to lie, he might be, but I feel like the interpretation you've given and the presentation, the way of the ideas.
Forget Hegel. I don't give a shit about Hegel.
Okay.
If I may just cut in, if I may cut in and say something real quick, right?
What's up?
One of the main points of Hegel's work in philosophy and logic is, so when you say things like possibility, right, or you say things like model, or you say things like I am making this model, I is the self, right? These are all concepts you're talking about. Like, these are certain ways of thinking about this stuff. Those are the very things, right? Those are the very things in which Hegel points out that we have to prove. So like we can't just like take possibility for granted, right? We can't take model for granted. We can't take self for granted. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, anyways, look, if you got a detail, we can go over that detail. Forget Hegel. Okay. Just tell me what the detail is.
Okay, the detail of why I disagree with your absolute certainty of knowledge, or
you said something was wrong, and that you can tell. Well, hold on. You said that I said something wrong, and that you don't have to know what's right in order to tell it's wrong. Okay, what did I say that was wrong?
Okay, so I mean, again, I could give a specific, more
Yeah, yeah.
semantic example,
Yeah,
like,
give me
hey,
the
what's the
specific.
answer to this differential equation? Is it banana? Okay,
Differential
so
equations are not objects that are
what's the
absolute.
answer
Like,
to thermal?
none of that was what the presentation is
Okay,
about. The
okay,
question
well,
Hegel's dealing with is claims upon the world of the world as such. It's not claims of things in the world where I get to assume what the world is and what is possible in the world
again,
and what I exist in the world.
sure. And what I'm saying is, okay, let's say, is there a pink elephant in front of me right now? Like,
That's not a claim about the
I'm pretty
absolute
sure there's.
world. That's not a
And
claim
well,
about the
okay,
absolute world.
okay, well, then which one is it? You're moving the goalposts. Like you said,
I'm not
give
moving
me
the
a claim
goalposts.
and how
Literally,
you
my
don't have to know it like.
presentation made this clear, buddy. I mean, maybe you have a memory that doesn't go far back
Yeah,
enough,
so
but that's your problem.
yeah, so this so
All right, well, if you're not
okay,
gonna
so
fight it,
so the way
then
the way to put it the way to put it would be like this, right? Um so what Hegel when people say as such in philosophy, right? They're dealing with what are the things themselves, or another way to put it would be what are the categories themselves. So it wouldn't be like what is this what is this thing in nature, right? What is this rock, right? Or like what is this particular elephant, or whatever, right? It would be like what is nature itself as a category, right? Like how does that self justify it, how does the categories in nature, the proper categories that can, how do they like what are they, how do they work, right? That's the kind of stuff that philosophy is dealing with. It's not like uh well, like there's like a green dog on Sunday, right? um
yeah.
because that would be to do with something about like you personally, not not something
The state of the
philosophical,
world.
which is impersonal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, either way, the point of my contention was to show that, you cannot make claims to certainty from either a negative or positive standpoint.
Yeah, you're wrong. I mean, the only way to make certainty is from self-standing, absolute standpoints, which would be self-generative, self-evidencing
You,
standpoints.
I mean,
Of which,
we
for
keep
example,
so
2 plus 2 is not such a
it's
standpoint, nor is a pink elephant such a standpoint.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess we've reached an impasse, and I'm glad you have such certainty. Like, I don't know if that brings you peace or
There,
something, but
there's some
sounds like
there's a
religious
lot of
is
good
good
stuff
number,
on this. There's a lot of good stuff on this. Not just by Hegel directly, but there's a lot of good stuff on this by like Stephen Holgate. I'd recommend you consider looking into that.
I recommend you
But
look
all
at my
right, we're
blog.
I think we're gonna move on.
My blog has plenty of stuff on this.
I don't know much time to.
Yeah.
All right, good talk.
No.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for your questions. All right, we're gonna move on to Abysmo. Abysmo's been waiting a while.
Yo. Thank you for the presentation. So I have like four points, and the last one is the actual question. I'll try to run through them quickly. So number 1, cosmic redshift, background radiation, rate of cosmic expansion have an interpretive element to them, but it doesn't mean that the observations that were made aren't empirical and can't be considered facts in and of themselves. That we can build like an induction off of. I'm not like autistically trying to like nitpick. I'm just trying to like respond to Mobius because I thought it was a little half baked. Prelin's challenge to circularity, I'm kind of sympathetic towards that too. About Hegel in general, more so because I'm thinking from kind of like a post-Heideggerian like postmodernism that we're kind of in. So it's really difficult to appeal to like purely non-material assumptions about objectivity. But other than that, ultimately, it doesn't really shift the narrative or shift the polemic at all, because it's still part of the burden of skeptics to prove. And yeah, Heidegger's, I guess, like claims just can't be merely hand waved, right? I would say that other people like, but and Flanders as well, like you guys keep come from like the same direction, which is like, you know, how do you prove that, you know, Hegel's right? Right? That's kind of like the same kind of scheme you guys are following. Heidegger is generally the one who tried to take on the mantle of trying to challenge the ontological assumptions that people like Hegel and St. Thomas were making. There's a lot of debate around that, but Heidegger does make some interesting observations about like being in the world versus, what is it that reality, or what Hegel calls the infinite, Hegel just says, no, that's just that's just a background in which like agents are just, creating meaning into. But anyways, here's my real question. I'm sorry, Antonio. So in your particular experience, what do you find is the most difficult insight that Hegel is trying to deliver, that you find new people have the most difficulty in either recognizing or understanding? Is it because of the subtlety, complexity, or just a straight up IQ filter? Which that last part, I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm assuming that someone like Hegel, or in Hegel's methodology, he would probably construct his own rational IQ filters or reasoned IQ filters.
Yeah, I would say literally being a nothing is a gigantic IQ filter. It's the very first page of the fucking book is a gigantic IQ filter. People with many people with PhDs have just fallen on the sword on that first page, never gotten back up, just kind of called it quits and called the whole thing retarded.
Main question: what do you find is the most difficult insight that Hegel is trying to deliver that we just can't get?
The most difficult. I think for most people, it's hard to believe in the finite infinite identity that Hegel makes, which is obviously strongly related to the God-creature. It's also really the God-creature relationship, in which, like, if you understand the finite infinite, so many things in theology and religion suddenly make sense, which cannot make sense before that. So even when people understand that, they have like a huge issue then like accepting that this pretty much locks them into the other stuff. And so you have a bunch of, neo-Hegelian atheists, for example, who like will totally accept that stuff and then like will have a cognitive dissonance moment and deny all like the metaphysical stuff about, how goodness always wins and, God is in control of everything, everything's on plan from Hegel. And they'll be like, oh, actually, he was just paying lip service. He didn't really mean that. He didn't really believe that.
Oh yeah, remember the whole conspiracy theory, like in quotes about like, oh no, Hegel's actually a secret atheist despite like his, entire work, being in a philosophical sense, theistic.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of like a lame straw man, because people just don't know Hegel. I mean, like, that's the whole point of Heidegger, is that Heidegger was critiquing Hegel for being such an absolute idealist.
Yeah, but what's crazy? You know what's crazy is like most of this stuff comes about by people literally just not reading, like not like reading and then running into confusion, but literally just not reading. Like one of the things is people try to they try to formalize the beginning of the science of logic, being nothing becoming. The problem with that, obviously, is the reader just comes from the second introduction, where it's the most radical breakdown of presupposition. So obviously, right, why would somebody who has been paying attention, why would they assume formalism? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyways, Abysmo, I got something in the treat for you, Donna. In sometime in the future. Do you know who Father Reginald Garrigou Lagrange is? He's a famous Thomas from the 1900s who had beef with Hegel.
Lagrange. Yep.
So I'm going to do a little critique of his interpretation of Hegel.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm telling you, I'm going to make a critique of him later. I'll make a video. Sometime in the future.
I'm a Thomist, but I don't follow Lagrange myself. Lagrange, he was a phenomenologist. So with that, I can't fucking think of his name right now. Fucking hell. Anyways, he was like a student of like a kind of quasi mid famous phenomenologist who was a student of Heidegger's. But anyways, but yeah, no, I'd be interested in seeing kind of like what you can piece together from like their disagreements and stuff. That's really interesting because usually they would be on the same side because Heidegger critiques Hegel and Aquinas in the same way. So I think you said that you read a little bit of Heidegger, but like I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm not a Heidegger guy. I can't say much about what he thinks.
Okay. So basically the idea is Heidegger he goes back, reads Aristotle, he rejects phenomenology, like this whole attempt of trying to come up with formal, like to formalize concepts and everything. He's just like tired of it, right? And so then he goes after one of his major claims towards the end.
Well, actually, Abysmo, sorry to cut you off, but like we got at least one other person with their hand up, and I'm gonna leave in about 15 minutes. So we want to deal with questions if they got questions.
We can talk about it later.
Yeah, later.
Okay.
Something for later. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you for your question, Abysmo. Yeah, let's see. Oh, okay. It looks like the person stopped raising their hand.
And
So let's go to the questions. Yeah, let's go to see if there's any more interesting questions in Hegel questions, and we can probably wrap it up after that. Give a bit of a closing statement.
Let me see the text questions here. Somebody points out sublation was used.
Someone asks what
medical
religion
term. Okay, Flanders had asked something much earlier. What proof do you have evil destroys itself instead of flourishes? What is the point of appealing to your concept of good and evil? Since evil is a selfish thing, it only cares about itself and literally does not pay attention to the condition of its own being. Evil, by definition, is like a cancer. It will destroy the system in which it lives, and so it will therefore ultimately destroy itself. Just definitional. And Nage asked, if absolute idealism has an ultimate reality, wouldn't that ultimate reality be the same thing as materialism? Are they basically both descriptions of the same thing? I mean, if by matter you mean something that's immaterial and unformed, prime matter, then sure. If by matter you mean, physical, spatio-temporal stuff, then no, because it's not going to happen. Somebody asked, what would your response be to those who may argue that this line of reasoning is either overcomplicating or tends to circular reasoning of itself? Oh, that's what he asked earlier. Well, we didn't deal with the line complicating. For one, like Hegel's actually supremely simple. That anybody who tells you, "Oh, Hegel's just overcomplicating things," go read the guy. It's the reason people have problems is because he's so simple. Like people don't understand that in the world of thought, the simple things are the hard things to understand. It's not the complex things. And as for circular reasoning, well, yes, it's circular, but it's a virtuous circularity, self-productive.
Yeah, people are not used to thinking of simple things because they unfortunately want to keep adding stuff to what it is that they're thinking about. So they just end up projecting a lot.
Somebody asked, ultimately, doesn't absolute idealism yield interest into soft actualism? Well, I don't know what soft actualism is. I've never heard of that. What religion do I follow? I'm a Christian, basically. Non-denominational, but theologically I veer closest to, as far as I'm aware, orthodoxy. Other questions. Let me see. Some people had DM'd me questions. Somebody wants to know, what is the separation between Hegel's knowledge and God's knowledge? That's basically the distinction between the finite knowledge represented in my mind and the knowledge that is ontological. So like in Hegel's logic, there is no distinction between being and thought. So when he's talking about being, he's both talking about the concept of being in your mind, the intelligible meaning, but he's also talking about the ontological structure. So God's knowledge is both that which is in our mind as concepts, pure forms, but it's also the actual form of all things. Anything that is. Anything that exists has a structure of existence. So God's knowledge is that structure itself. So there's no difference between the thing and the knowledge of the thing for God, or the absolute idea, whichever you want to call it.
We have somebody that wants to come up on stage real quick.
Okay.
And have them up, ask a question. All right. WSU.
Hi.
Do you have a question?
No.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you guys. I was kind of listening before. Is it kind of an ontological question you're asking about Hegel, or is that? That it? What is existence? Is that what you're talking about?
No, somebody just asked a question between somebody just asked a question between the difference between the knowledge in our heads and the knowledge of that God has. But
I think
Hegel.
Question? That kind of whole quote about what is right. I think with some of the question was I was going to ask a question about Bertrand Russell, which I know everyone will scoff at, but he kind of critiques Hegel somewhere for saying that the issue with Hegel's epistemology is that, according to the way Russell talks about it, in order to know anything, you need to know everything in a sense. So in order to know what, for instance, the example he uses is, you need to know what is an uncle. Well, in order to know an uncle, you need to know what a nephew is, you need to know what a brother is, and so on. And knowledge sort of goes in this kind of direction where you get this infinite space of relations. And really, when I was reading Hegel years ago, it kind of struck me that this was sort of an issue with it. Unconvincing for me. Do you have a response to that? To the epistemology, I suppose, that critique.
Yeah, for one, everybody knows that, yes, if you actually want to make the claims that I know what the world is, then I'm going to have to get out of La La Land and realize, wow, everything in the world is together. Amazing. Unbelievable. I needed a philosopher to tell me that. So when we go on to claim real, true, the total knowledge, we need to know everything. That's you don't need an analytic philosopher to tell you that. But then there are qualified levels of that knowledge. There's applicable operations. So do I actually need to know becoming to know that being is a bunch of nothing? No. Is it that entailed in being nothing, that there is becoming? Yes. So I don't need to get you all the way 700 pages down the line to the absolute idea in the science of logic for you to know that being is nothing. You can know it right there in the first page. For certain, absolute.
I'm sorry. Does it mean? So I mean, does it mean that there has to be some kind of ghostly space in which all this knowledge of what is, the opposite of being, which is nothing, is sort of contained in the human brain? I mean, that's part of the issue I have. I mean,
No.
I know that Hegel says the progress of knowledge is this kind of determination, this determining process of mixing the dialectical
Hegel
process.
wouldn't make.
Well, getting it wrong.
Hegel wouldn't make those kinds of presuppositions. First of all, but anyway, go ahead, Antonio.
Yeah, there's no presuppositions, and I'm sorry, like I blanked out on what is it you asked specifically? Can you repeat that? Oh, okay. Oh, no, I remembered.
Well,
no, I remembered. I remembered you asked about the whole, like, does that imply, a Platonic space of ideas? No, it does not imply a Platonic space of ideas. All that it implies is that you need to comprehend that what you understand by concepts is not anything physical, spatio-temporal. Whatever it is, it's not in space and it's not in time. It's not dictated by space. It's not affected by time. So, I mean, if you feel uncomfortable calling that immaterial, well, you can call it whatever you want so long as you understand this is not a physical thing.
I kind of understand that. I understand the connection to theology too, but I mean, as an epistemological account, I don't find it convincing. I mean, do you need, therefore, a kind of theological view of things in order to make it convincing? I mean, Plato, I think, can kind of fit into an epistemology. I mean, you can say, well, there might be some genetic basis to kind of mathematical ideas, but from the Hegelian point of view, it seems like you need to have the whole world already set up and all its relations and all its determinings and self-criticisms in order to get any knowledge.
Well, you said you find it unconvincing. What don't you find convincing? Like, what is it that you're referring to?
Well, you're quite right. I mean, because you're going to say, well, then it's just the material account I'm fixating on. But as an epistemology, is it at all interesting as an epistemology, an idea of how we understand knowledge?
Well, I mean, in the presentation, the epistemology for Hegel is this simple. I know what the thing I'm talking about is. I look at the world. Something fits under that form. It's that simple. There is, then it's the case. If there isn't, then it's not the case. It's as simple as those little children's toys that have like the shapes, holes. That's Hegel's epistemology. It's literally that simple. Does the square go into the square hole? Then it's a fucking square, buddy.
Yeah, well, I mean, but the whole point that Hegel's making is that there's nothing remains stable. I mean, every concept seems to have this kind of provisional validity where, it's basically just waiting for the self-criticism until you make your way to God intellectually. There's no part of knowledge where you can go and say, this is the final determinate being as far as I understand. I mean, everything is going through the process of self-criticism.
When you're talking about empirical stuff, right? That stuff, right, wouldn't be about you proving concepts. That would be about you matching the concepts, and this is what Hegel's work is for. It would be about proving the concepts. Once you have the concept, it's just a matter of matching the concept to what it is you find.
Yeah,
but you have to actually valid concepts first. And like the issue with Russell would be like Russell doesn't have valid concepts. He can't prove the concepts he's trying to use. They're just assumptions for him.
Yeah, I mean, this might be part of the IQ filter, but I read Hegel. I could never work out what at all the concept was. And also, are the concepts ever subject to this kind of corrosive self-critiquing that's meant to go into everything else.
Well,
Did you try reading The Science of Logic?
I tried 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago would have been very hard.
So,
It's much easier now. I'm here. You can just look at my stuff because that's what I'm here for. No, it sounds to me like you just didn't have a good secondary insight on those particular issues, like the whole all concepts become something else. Hegel gives an example in the Phenomenology of Spirit, for example, prefaces somewhere around the 50s, and he's like, look, saying the sun is a hot gaseous plasma ball is literally already doing that job of like, oh no, but concepts don't stay still. Oh my God, what do we do? Nothing ever stays the same. Saying the sun is hot gaseous plasma has already gone from the sun, which is just a simple concept at first. You've expanded it with predicates. Yep. You understand each predicate individually, singularly, independently, and then you bring them all back together, and you understand that they all belong to the sun. So the sun you end with at the end of the sentence is not the sun you begin with at the beginning of the sentence. That's nothing mysterious.
No, but it does raise questions about validity because, again, with Hegel, I mean, it doesn't seem to end up anywhere. I mean, you can say that the sun is this kind of, and then you kind of say, well, you arrive at a final answer. It's a kind of gaseous ball, something like that. But, I mean, as far as I understand, the whole critiquing thing is offsetting what it is and what it isn't. You kind of need this whole background stage of knowledge to determine what the sun is. And all I mean is that the final concept you end up with is so open textured, like in the Hegelian point of view, that really you can't actually grab onto any part. I mean, that's sort of my problem.
No, that's not true. That's like saying, once you finish university, man.
On and on and on.
Well, it doesn't go on and on. It's just like university. Once you get your degree and you get a job, at the end you've got a very highly textured and multi-layered view of the world, but that doesn't cripple you in any way. You find it pretty easy to move around.
Okay, well, I know what you're saying. I don't know how. The process of acquiring knowledge. There's a kind of convincing part. I mean, just going back to my central point, it is a process of critiquing, self-critiquing and determining being from nothing in that kind of general sense.
But here's the thing. Let me explain what your issues probably is, and this is a real issue, just like of pedagogy now and in the future until this becomes like normal, like Aristotle became normal at a certain point. This is supposed to be something that you learn throughout your formative years. Obviously, you get to university, you already know what a cause and effect is, you know what a thing is, you know what objectivity is. If Hegel's way of thinking was the norm that you already had, you would encounter this textbook, and this textbook would be reduced down to like 100 pages, because it would be that easy. Because the concepts themselves aren't complex in the way that people think. The reasoning is complex because this is a purely categorical exemplification. But if what you were getting is like, here's the systematic order of all the things that you've already known, it's really easy to just repass all of that and go like, oh yeah, I can see how these things connect to you. And so yes, for people today, they encounter this stuff, and it feels like you need to relearn everything. It feels you need to relearn what being is, what existence is, and it's true. You have to relearn, because he's not talking exactly about the everyday senses that these words have. But if you grew up with like learning this stuff piece by piece, through your fucking middle school and high school, this would be no problem.
Well, I suppose, I've got an analytical point of view. I mean, and I can't see where the analytical view goes wrong according to Hegel. And it sounds like the way you were describing Hegel before, analysis of what the sun is. Can't analysis, does an analysis sort of cover the exact same ground, except I think in a more cogent, sort of more delimited and clear kind of way. I'm talking about analytical philosophy.
Yeah, sure. I think that's just a misunderstanding of what applies to what. You're not going to be employing Hegelian philosophy to do anything, really. Hegelian philosophy just applies to categories. It does not apply to propositions. It does not apply to, particular judgments about, what do I do in this one case of a legal affair or whatever. Nothing of that kind. It's not going to apply to the way you do your scientific experiments. All your regular life is lived under what Hegel calls the understanding, in German idealism. The basic analytic and synthetic form in which you just put things willy-nilly together, and all Hegel cares about is like the proof of categories. That's pure philosophy for him. So unless you're doing that, everything else, you're not doing it in that way, which is perfectly fine. If that's not what you're interested in, like if you're going to apply a concept, like for example, you're like, okay, here's a concept of, Hegel's view of causality. Where do I, does this one thing fall under causality? Is it identical to causality? Is it different from causality? Then you just use everyday basic analytical understanding. You're not going to be using the Hegelian understanding.
Okay. That's interesting. I'll answer more questions.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we've been here for 3 hours, guys, and I have something else that I need to do in a couple of minutes. But hopefully this was interesting to the people who came and listened. For those of you who weren't here for the whole thing, here on the side chat, I'm posting the recording. It was streamed live, so you can play it back right now if you want for whatever you missed. Final remarks from myself is hopefully you understood something interesting about Hegel. It's a very hard topic to really talk about. It's hard to really explain its relevance and why it matters. I think I probably made a mistake a bit too much in going over a bit too much detail about like certain positions of his, quite frankly. But yeah, thank you for attending. Thanks for those of you who. Sorry for those of you who still have your hands up.
One last thing I'll say. So for Hegel, one last thing I'll say. Hegel, he has the true method of philosophy, and he's also a presuppositionalist. And also we have a Discord server. Check out Empyrean Trail if you'd like to hang out and ask questions to do with philosophy. It's much less debate broy than events like these. This is like a careful philosophy server.
I'm sad none of the precepts show up, man.
It's a different kind of space.
But yeah,
we did not get any of the precepts.
Server, check out my channel. On my profile is a Linktree link with all my blogs, social media. I have a lot of free information out there. A lot of people don't know they're sleeping on it, but if you want to learn some Hegel, I got some of the best tools you're going to find. But all right. See you around. Okay, for those on YouTube, let me talk about one more thing that you guys mentioned. I'm sorry. So if the absolute idea was already certain to Hegel before he wrote the Logic, how to be genuine, believing truth exists is worth seeking. That's a reasonable presupposition any thinker can make. Believe me, you already know what the truth is, which is what I'm saying of Hegel. That's not true. Hegel did not claim to know what the truth is already at the beginning. read the Science of Logic and read the Phenomenology of Spirit, you will find that to be immediately false. Agents, probability is still a moment in Hegel's logic, but we don't reduce reality down to probability. Unfortunately, in that, I didn't end up bringing up the issue of how we judge something to be probable or not. That, you know, that person mentioned the whole thing about how in science, you know, we're getting a more probable view of the world, which is completely nonsensical, because in order for you to set a probability to say this is more or less probable, more or less likely, you need to know the bound. In order for you to tell me that here's a die, it has X sides, and it is more probable to get, you know, roll between this number and that number, or here's the probability of rolling this number or that number. Unless you tell me how many sides and how many numbers we have, you know, on that die, you cannot tell me the actual probability of any of those faces landing. So as far as it comes to world theories, theories of everything that science tries to get at in many ways, you cannot tell me something is or is not scientifically more or less probable as being true. And okay, that seems to be all that was really relevant to what was in the discussion. Might have one more. Yeah, that was it. So for those of you who showed up, hopefully you were entertained. Hopefully you learned something. I will go back and try to add in timestamps for the chats. Well, yeah, for the questions. I don't know. You guys tell me if you thought it was anything much worthwhile. Quite frankly, I did not expect many good questions. I mean, the questions we got were relevant, but there wasn't much room to explain in detail, particularly when you're trying to have a dialogue. I can't give a fucking lecture, can I? I am disappointed that no religious presuppers showed up, because I wanted to try something on their scripts. Yeah, I don't know if this was an event that was just kind of slightly planned a month ago. Yeah, this is a live upload. But anyways, I might get on later. I might just do a solo reading of the Phenomenology to continue, but that depends on what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go talk to somebody about a philosophy of right issue that they asked me about.